Chapter 46, in which Princess Kitty saves the day. From the cathedral radio in the Pratchett's living room, the shamelessly boastful voice of Phineas Trout went on with his report.
This is Phineas Trout once again. It's now 21 minutes to 2 before the Zeppelin's inevitable departure, aside from a heated argument against Fritz R. Donovan, our 20th and current mayor. The band is playing, and the crew is waving to the crowd below with the two children aboard, Todd and Audrey Pratchett, being the two people to see the view of the entire city from the Zeppelin once it takes flight. In fact, among the crowd was the children's grandfather, John Pratchett.
However, Grandma Eliza sneered, saying,
"The nerve of that man! Let us hush up for a while,"
Grandma Eileen said, lowering her face.
"The day is still youthful and remains innocent."
Phineas Trout's voice continued from the radio.
The group of people responsible for mooring ropes are eagerly awaiting the departure signal. The final check seemed almost complete, which gives us...
Pratchett's! Lunch is almost ready! Mrs. Pratchett calls out from the kitchen.
"That's good,"
Grandma Eileen said.
"We're just relaxing, listening to the radio."
"Has it taken off yet?"
Grandpa David asked, impatiently.
"I want to get this over with."
"Not yet, Father," Mrs. Pratchett said. "Just listen to the broadcast and you'll know."
"I don't think I should,"
Grandma Eileen said.
"Change it to another station."
Mrs. Pratchett turned the dial on the radio. "Lunch will be ready soon," she said.
"Could you bring the tray here onto the bed when you're done with the oatmeal?"
Grandma Eliza asked. "I will, Mother," Mrs. Pratchett said, and head back to the kitchen. As the music blares out from the radio, Mr. Pratchett came into the room. He was still upset.
"Now look, you!"
Grandma Eliza snapped.
"You're still not upset, are you? Then we are about as upset as you as well. If I ever get my hands on Jack..."
"No, Eliza, don't," he said. "This will never make things a lot more better if you dare hurt my father."
"You think we'd let go of this? After Jack gave us such attitude like that?"
Grandma Eliza shouted.
"When he gets home..."
"This is between me and my father. I want you three to stay out of it."
"Oh, to blazes with him,"
Grandma Eileen laughed. A very sorrowful laugh, which gives out the impression of absolute hurt and elation. "How could you say that, Mother?" Mr. Pratchett asked. "He's my father." "He's your father, but he's also my husband," she said, and she felt the elation overtake her in a wave.
"However, he isn't the husband I've known. I don't like what he has become now."
"Does it look like I care for him at the moment?"
"I've known this man and loved him for 60 years. He looked me in the eyes and gave me his vow of love at the party. I've been dedicating my life to him, but now..."
"So help us God, we will get through to that man,"
Grandma Eliza said. "No, you will not," Mr. Pratchett said. "You stay away from Dad, because I don't want any more trouble in this house."
"I swear,"
Grandma Eileen said.
"I think all this nonsense has taken over everything, including my Jack."
"I'm heading to the kitchen and talk to my wife, and then I'll be heading upstairs to my room in a couple of minutes. I hear that Todd and Audrey are already on board. There's 17 minutes left until 2. That's what I'm afraid of more than anything else in the world. No matter how many times people say that things will turn out well, I still don't trust that airship." "They'll be home safely, Mother. Don't you worry about a thing." "Oh, from your lips to the ears of the Lord." While Mrs. Pratchett is preparing 3 bowls of oatmeal slop on a tray in the kitchen, Mr. Pratchett entered the room. "The oatmeal is almost ready," she said. "It's not that," he sulked. "It's the children, Todd and Audrey. I know exactly what's going on with them, love. I've already talked to Hollister, and that was days ago. They're just going through a condition. A childhood phase. Every child does go through this phase. Eventually, it's something they'll grow out of. They'll grow up like us, and that'll be the end of it. Just wait a few more years. Eventually, they'll have no other choice but to get their head out of the clouds and start keeping both feet on the ground. If they don't, we must tell them it's for their own good. And what about Princess Kitty, love? With so many things happening, if it has anything to do with her, I probably doubt if life in Kedono is going to be back to normal after the bicentennial. Look, love, you know what I think of Princess Kitty? I only think of her as an imaginary friend. I always think that when I visit Hollister. They'll have to let her go. Now, I think the grandparents are impatient enough about their oatmeal as it is. I must get these served to them. Would you please tell them that I'm coming? But what if the people of the city doesn't let her go? Everything will be fine, love. I promise. Our children will let her go, and they'll have to grow up. Mr. Pratchett heads back to the living room, while the grandparents are lounging with the radio on, announcing, "She's coming with the oatmeal. I'll be upstairs for about an hour and hope I get better."
You get better.
Grandma Lane said. "I'm warning you three. Stay away from my father when he gets home." Then he heads upstairs, but he happens to intrude his children's room. While turning on their wireless radio, his attention turned to the drawings tacked to the wall.
The 500-foot Providence will make the scheduled departure in 14 minutes before 2, in spite of enduring a torrential rainstorm earlier in the week.
Brock Kincaid's voice announced on the radio.
That's the word from Nativity Line's employee Pierce Struzik, who is the captain of this floating vessel. For those who aren't attending the launch at the fairground, you may still get some coverage from our radio station. Now, here's Clayton Wilbury with the rest of the news. Thank you, Brock.
Clayton Wilbury's voice announced.
I'm at the fairground where the dirigible is making the departure with the 2 passengers on board, Todd and Audrey Pratchett, ages 12 to 8 respectively, according to their grandfather, John Pratchett. Along with news reporter Phineas Trout, in just 13 minutes, the departure of the Providence shall be the biggest spectacle our city has ever seen in this grand bicentennial celebration.
Mr. Pratchett dials the radio to another station and opens the front window to get some air before he turns to the drawings his children made. He knows that in a few years they will grow up. But what will become of the drawings? Drawings of creatures that don't exist, but exist in their minds. In the trash, never to be recovered? Besides, if this Princess Kitty exists in their minds, maybe they should be stored. He might think of adding them in a scrapbook, but he would do that later when the children came back from the fairground. Deliberately, he began to remove one drawing after another from the wall. He glanced at each one before placing it onto the desk. On the wall, one drawing remained. One drawing of Princess Kitty. Seeing that, maybe, he thought, she was just imaginary after all. Then he takes down the drawing, proclaiming, "It's time to grow up." As soon as he picks up the stack and steps back, he hears a loud screech from below, causing him to scream and jump in a fright, accidentally sending the drawings scattering. He looks down. That's when he discovers Haruka and Minako below his feet, growling and hissing. "Where'd you come from?" he demanded. "How'd you get here?" One of the cats scratched his leg. He screamed and slipped onto one of the drawings. His legs shoot out from under him, and he lands on his back. Haruka jumped up onto the desk. "Hey!" he shouted and got up to his feet and goes after her. But she stepped back and hissed. As soon as he reaches down to touch her, she hissed and swat a paw at his hand, but he recoils before he can get scratched. Hearing a noise and turning to the source, that's when he noticed a sign of something peculiar about these two cats he discovered. One of the cats, Minako, opening the door by jumping up and pulling down on the handle with her weight. He can only stare as she slips off, and the door opens slightly, before squeezing her body through. Haruka went to the radio and changed it out back to the news coverage. I don't want to hear. He reaches out to turn off the radio, but Haruka screams and swats at him again, urging him to leave it on, before she follows her twin. For a moment, he didn't realize what he had seen. Then he heads out of the bedroom and into the hall. Looking downstairs, Minako did the same thing. She jumped up, grabbed the handle, and pulling it down, opening the door slightly, letting her and Haruka go through it and out of the house. What could he be thinking of? He heads downstairs and closed the door before heading back to Todd and Audrey's room. He looked out the window, staring at the cats. Haruka and Minako stared back for a moment before they scamper away, leaving him dumbfounded. There is no way a cat, no matter the size and weight, can ever open doors. Hell, there is no way a cat can even change a dial on a radio. Closing the window, he gave himself a little shake and put the cats out of his mind. He thought of nothing except only those two children, knowing that it is time to grow up. Not that it would change anything, but it would make the children realize that it's for their own good. At the same moment, he picks up the drawings off the floor. Out of curiosity's sake, Grandma Liza decides to turn the dial back to the news coverage from the bicentennial celebration. Only 9 minutes left before the inevitable launch, and only 1.5 minutes left before the storm.
Boy, they don't make music that good anymore today, huh?
She said.
I know.
Grandma Eileen said.
That takes me back when I met Jack at the Hotel Adriano. It makes me paralyzed when I got engaged to him. Why, the other men in tuxes grew envious, especially the ones with their chaperones. Of course, that was before our time.
The voice of Phineas Trout blares out.
Okay, now the men from ground control are carefully detaching the mooring ropes in the middle, one by one.
Quiet!
Grandpa David shouted.
I want to listen to this. We all do, David.
Grandma Liza said. The voice of Phineas Trout continues.
Okay, now we receive word from the captain that everything is going well at the control cabin. They've already tested the rudders and the elevators. They're all in good working condition since the repair. Pops will start in 7 minutes.
Just then, there was the sound of a strong gale, accompanied by the panicking screams of people.
Has it taken off yet?
Grandpa David asked. Grandma Eileen was now concerned.
Doesn't look like it. It sounds like a very unexpected accident.
The voice of Phineas Trout reports from the radio.
We're in serious trouble here. The mooring ropes have been snapped off one by one, and the dirigible is being blown away by freak winds. Oh my God! One of the motors is heading towards one of our broadcast fans. Quick, get!
There was a loud crash before the broadcast went dead. Without making a sound, everyone turned their attention to the radio for about a few moments, hoping the important broadcast would continue and give a clear picture of what had happened. However, instead, the voice of Brock Kincaid announced,
Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue the broadcast from the Kodono Fairground. Eventually, there's some difficulty with our field transmission. However, we will return to that point at the earliest opportunity.
Are you serious?
Grandma Liza demanded. The voice of Brock Kincaid continued.
For now, please stand by as we give you this musical intermission. You're listening to the Kodono Broadcasting Company.
Then Litz Liebestrame began blaring from the radio. However, it did little to dampen Grandma Liza's irritation.
Intermission, my arse!
She shouted.
Just when it was getting good, you better give us the broadcast, you! You and your excitement.
Grandma Eileen cried.
It seems that my fears come back from the dead.
Mrs. Pratchett enters the living room with a tray of 3 bowls. Oatmeal slop filled in each bowl. Calm down, she said. I got you 3 lunch. I told you I was coming, didn't I?
It's not about the lunch!
Grandma Liza yelled.
It's the bloody broadcast!
What about it? What happened?
There has been a terrible accident.
Grandma Eileen wailed, her heart beating faster.
I knew it! Oh God! There's been a terrible accident with the dirigible!
Please, calm down, Mrs. Pratchett said. Then she gasped when a huge gust of wind rattles the windows and the trees outside. The bells on the tree ring frantically, and one of them fell off. Oh dear, she cried. What a strong wind we've been having this summer. But it'll pass quickly. Then the music stops, and the voice of Brock Kincaid announced on the radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Cadono Broadcasting Company would like to thank you for your patience for those who are still tuning in. We now return to the Cadono Fairground during the bicentennial celebration.
Well, that's more like it.
Grandma Liza said.
About time, too.
Now Mrs. Pratchett and the 3 grandparents began hearing the panicking screams and cries of people as the voice of Phineas Trout cried out.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back after our broadcast has lost connection for a few moments. For those who are listening, please forgive the technical difficulties. This is Phineas Trout once again reporting for the bicentennial celebration at Cadono Fairground. It appears that the Providence has been assaulted by freak winds coming from the sea just 7 minutes and 29 seconds before the scheduled departure.
You see?
Grandma Eileen demanded. But Mrs. Pratchett can feel herself shaken, her knuckles turning red, her ears getting assaulted with sounds of panic.
What's wrong, dear?
Grandma Liza asked.
Now the ship has lost its balance and is now at a near vertical angle after it has broken loose from its mooring ropes.
Phineas Trout's voice cries out.
Right now, the ground crew makes their desperate last-ditch effort to anchor the last rope holding the out-of-control dirigible and keep it from drifting into the air. But it's extremely doubtful whether or not this can actually be done. Wait! Oh no! It looks like the tremendous lift of the helium gas is pulling the dirigible higher and higher. The powerful force of the helium is matched against several hundred people. It's throwing them off one by one. Even a patrol car is being carried away like a toy. All I do know is that the children and the Zeppelin crew are inside the control cabin.
It took several seconds for Trout's words, so casually uttered, to penetrate. What? Mrs. Pratchett finally gasped.
Oh no!
Phineas Trout screamed.
A man in a brown suit is being carried away with a patrol car! Who would have thought something like this would happen, especially during the bicentennial celebration? Oh, the humanity! I don't know how much I can take it any longer, folks. I can't even breathe! Oh God! The dirigible's on the loose!
No!
Mrs. Pratchett screamed in horror as she dropped the tray and buries her face. The 3 bowls of oatmeal came crashing down onto the floor, the bowl shattering on impact. Grandma Liza screamed.
Oh, the food!
Grandpa David bawled in anger and sadness.
Now look what you've done, you reckless ass! You went and spilled all the oatmeal onto the floor! Now what are we going to eat?
Mr. Pratchett burst through the living room, his face sweating and his heart racing. We have to get to the streets on foot, he screamed. Dad still has the family car.
Did you hear the broadcast?
Mrs. Pratchett wailed. I've just heard it on the radio in Todd and Audrey's room. It said that the Providence is blowing towards the city. If it does, that's where we're going. Frantic, she dashed out of the house with her husband. The angry protests of Grandpa David and the others were masked by the terrifying panic that is heard from the cathedral radio as the broadcast continues from the fairground.
Hey, who's gonna feed us slop? Come back here! Don't leave us here by ourselves! We want our lunch. We're hungry. Do you hear? You come back or we'll starve.
But their pleas are rendered useless. Now they can do nothing but listen to the radio as Clayton Woolbury takes over for Phineas Trout, overwhelmed by the hell and the chaos which should have been prevented.
This is Clayton Woolbury taking over for Phineas Trout after he suffered tremendous shock upon sight of the dirigible that is now blowing towards the city, hundreds of feet up in the air and over the buildings. It appears what was once a glorious celebration has devolved into bedlam in just a matter of seconds. People were screaming, some injured. In fact, another disaster has happened when the Ferris wheel breaks down, leaving them stranded. I don't know where to begin. There were children inside the wheel, screaming for their mothers. It's just too much for me. I have received word that ambulances and firemen are dispatched and would expect to arrive here to treat the injured, but it might be delayed because of possible traffic issues, mostly because of what could have been a glorious bicentennial. You know what? I really need a break right now to help those people who are hurt. I'll get back to you in a moment.
The storm has begun. It has begun at last. Against Mayor Donovan's word, it seemed bad things did happen to the bicentennial. In just 7 minutes and 29 seconds before 2, a strong gale of wind from the sea assaults the fairground. It caused the fabric on the tops of some booths to get ripped off, and the Ferris wheel to break down, leaving people stranded and calling for help. It caused people who were on the platform to get blown off their feet. Some get knocked off and landed roughly onto the grass, resulting in injuries, including the mayor. It caused the umbrellas some people were carrying turn inside out. Some have their tops ripped apart and send the pieces flying. It caused Cameron Copley to be knocked out of the ladder just before it topples over and landed roughly onto the grass, leaving him with a bruise on his left leg. It caused Leola's bakery stall to be toppled over, although she was unharmed and uninjured. Most importantly, the most terrifying of all, it caused the Providence to break loose from the moorings. The rudders and the elevators are now useless and torn up, and one of the motors broke off after it collides with one of the KBC broadcast vans. The mooring ropes at the middle and the rear snapped, causing the tail to rise higher and reach an angle of 80 degrees, almost vertical, its nose nearly touching the ground. That's when the mooring crew made their desperate last-ditch effort. But they're no match for the powerful force of the helium that ironically made the Providence aloft, as it rose higher and higher and higher into the air, throwing off people one by one. Not even the police succeeded when they attached the line to the rear bumper of one cruiser, causing it to lift up into the air. One officer got out of the car and jumped, but it was a 12-foot drop, resulting in a broken leg. However, one manages to hold onto the rope with the cruiser tied to it. It was a man wearing a brown suit and matching shoes. You won't believe who he is. Above it all, Phineas Trout, in wretched shock, reports this terrible accident at the fairground so that people can listen to this broadcast on every radio at home and in every car. Even, of course, the Pratchett's. The shock was too immense that Clayton Woolbury takes over, but he happens to take a break to help those who are injured by the freak winds. As the Providence gets blown towards the city, Mayor Donovan, all dazed and holding his injured left arm, gets hoisted up by two of the city council, but he screamed in pain when Councilman Thorne accidentally grabbed his left arm. As soon as he was on his feet, Mayor Donovan pushed him aside and storms off.
Mayor, come back!
Councilman Sides shouted.
Can't you see you need...
He can hear the mayor screaming over and over in a state of shock as the panic continued around him.
No! This isn't supposed to happen! Not in my city!
That's when Councilman Sides realized why this accident occurred. That was a result of the mayor not welcoming the cat girl to the city, resulting in bad things affecting the bicentennial. At the meeting after the cat parade, Miss Lenoir meant every word she said about it. If things do not work out in the end, especially if this cat girl remains unwelcome, it will be only Donovan who suffers the consequences. In other words, he should have listened. He shouldn't have just sit here and wait to see what happens. However, his thoughts were interrupted by another scream from the mayor. That's because Grandpa Jack was grabbing him by the injured arm from behind.
You deliberately said to me that such things will not affect this special important event,
Grandpa Jack sneered.
What do you call that? Please humor me why that's not supposed to happen.
Let go of me!
Mayor Donovan ordered.
You're hurting me!
Grandpa Jack twisted his arm tighter, shouting angrily.
How about I break your other arm and your legs for talking back to me?
Councilman Thorne and Sights ran after Grandpa Jack.
Let him go!
Councilman Sights shouted.
Let him go, Jack!
Councilman Thorne pulls the mayor away from Grandpa Jack, shouting,
You leave him alone! Can't you see he's hurt?
Mayor Donovan elbowed him in the ribs, letting him go.
This isn't supposed to happen to my city!
He spat and stormed off. Too bad it did, Donovan. A foretaste of how human history will remember this. The day bad things happened to the bicentennial celebration. Grandpa Jack goes after him again, but is stopped by Councilman Sights.
No!
He shouted.
Leave him alone, Jack. You should have welcomed that girl to begin with.
Grandpa Jack turned and said, glaring,
How right you are! You see if he does this time! What he did was the worst thing he had ever done to her, because she's still not welcomed!
I know, Councilman Sights said, letting him go.
She deserves to be welcomed for everything she has done.
Councilman Thorne said, Let's hope this princess finds out about this and decides to do something about it. It's all going to get worse from here. Grandpa Jack's anger quickly turned to a small sadness.
That depends, Councilman, he said. That depends if she can make herself known. My grandchildren are still up in the dirigible, and she's the only one who could save them.
He makes his way to the family car, with his head and heart full of hope, and the feeling of queasiness in his stomach. Like yesterday, Princess Kitty was beginning to get very tired of being in the park for hours. Sadly, she has no place to go, and no place in the city to do great things. Last night, she had a horrible nightmare, where she found herself wandering in the streets under an overcast sky. All over the buildings, the campaign posters with Donovan's face on them. There were no people present, but she can hear the voices in her mind. The voices that are obtained with reprehension towards her, all in whispers. They say, You're not welcomed here. You don't exist. Go away. Every time, she frantically searched for someone present. She felt like she's on the verge of screaming out, so it can be loud enough to hear. But it seemed so ineffectual. Then, in the midst of the voices, she finally spotted someone in front of her. It was Mayor Donovan. It seemed that he had emerged from one of the campaign posters that were plastered all around. Glaring down into her eyes, he said to her with a voice full of reprimand and hatred, I want you gone. Then she was jolted awake in Cameron's apartment, her hands and feet trembling and soaked with sweat. Seeing that Cameron's still asleep in the middle of the night, it is best not to wake him. She went back to sleep until she awoke at 10:20 in the morning. Looking around, she knew that Cameron already left for work by now. However, placed next to her was an envelope. His handwriting read, Do what you think is right. CK. When she opened it, there were 5 sterlings inside. However, she made it perfectly clear to herself that she's not going to the fairground after all. She's being driven away because of what she is. Because of the turn of events, because of what Mayor Donovan had said on the radio about her, her world had been turned upside down, sending her hopes and dreams of being welcomed down the tubes. To make matters worse, because of a terrible dream last night, there was nothing neither she nor anyone else could say to rekindle her existence in the city she wants to call home. Not even the Pratchett children, though they never forgot her. As each minute that passes, the words came back to her over and over again. Our city's 200th birthday will be celebrated proudly, publicly, and without incident, especially from one half-cat creature that's not supposed to exist in our streets. I will not be tolerated any further with talks of such common lunacy. Because of this, because of him, without her, Kadono will be better off remaining ordinary, without any astonishing thing that has ever happened here. If people ever think that, even the Pratchett's, then she shouldn't have set foot here on May 12th. She should have stayed home in the kingdom instead. With her head lowered and full of grief at the fact that the city drove her away, she began singing softly to herself.
At the end of the rainbow there's happiness, and to find it how often I've tried. But my life is a race, just a wild goose chase, and my dreams have all been denied. Why do I always feel unwelcome? What can the reason be? I wonder if the world's to blame. I wonder if it could be me. I'm always chasing rainbows, watching clouds drifting by. My schemes are just like all my dreams, ending in the sky. Some fellows look and find the sunshine. I always look and find the rain. Some fellows all quit dreaming sometime, though I have nothing to complain. Believe me. I'm always chasing rainbows, waiting to find a little bluebird in vain.
Finally, when she can't stand the hateful words any longer, she got up and let out a short shout of, "Enough!" Then the words in her ears faded, as if a switch turned them off.
I dream of you, Donovan,
She said.
You want me gone. Your city wants me gone. After you had it turned against me, no matter how hard I have tried to impress it. Is that what you and Kadono want? If you wish things to go back to the way it was before? Then gone I shall be. If this is the only solution, I will.
She said to herself.
Eyes, look your last on this place. Feet, relish your last touch of the ground underneath you. My destiny is all for nothing. I am at the end, Kadono. I exist no more.
Then, at the end of her words, as if it was the roar of anger from a giant, a strong gale of wind from the sea descended towards her. She found herself flung backward by the overwhelming force before the back of her head struck a nearby tree, She heard and saw no more before her body landed on the grass beside it. Over the city of Kodono, there hung a great dread. Crowds were looking up in shock as the upside-down Zeppelin drifts over them all, like ants. The swarm of onlookers filled the sidewalk, spilling out into the intersections and blocking traffic. Cameron's black Mercedes was already parked onto the curb. On the top of the hood, he films the Zeppelin drifting over the city, looking up in shock and amazement. Not knowing what to do next, he said to himself, "Oh, Kitty. Kitty, if you can make your presence known throughout the city of Kodono, your time has come at last. You must do something about it if you catch wind of this. Otherwise, we will have more to fear." Meanwhile, inside the control cabin, the captain of the Providence, his crew, and the children all had their feet on the front side of it. When the captain saw Giff, who was hanging onto the cable as she slowly slides down to the Thai police cruiser, the captain shouts out to him from a megaphone.
"Hold on there, young man! Just hold your grip steady!"
"Will he ever be okay?" Todd asked. "Don't worry, son. As long as he doesn't let go and the police car supporting him, he will be." The captain then said to his crew,
"Release the helium from the rear compartments! It's the only way to save it! We have to keep this ship in balance!"
Mr. and Mrs. Pratchett run frantically into the streets, only to be stopped by the kitsune Furukawa Ryotaro. Behind him, there are more kitsunes. 4 of them are carrying 2 white caskets. Several males are in their black tuxedos, and females in their black kimonos. A group behind the caskets play a funeral hymn on their instruments, as the females sob and wail. Mrs. Pratchett didn't know him, but 3 days later, he was in the parking lot, helping with her groceries. He never forgets her face. He never does.
"What's inside those caskets?"
Mr. Pratchett said. "Of whom are you speaking?" Ryotaro asked. "You know who I'm speaking to. I want to know what's inside those caskets." "There has been a terrible loss of life, I'm afraid. 2 children have met horrible deaths."
"What?"
Mrs. Pratchett screamed, tears beginning to form.
"Oh, God! If you're talking about my children!"
"If these are your children, then I'm terribly sorry for your loss," Ryotaro said. "No child deserves to die young."
"That's not true!"
Mr. Pratchett shouted. "Your problems do not interest me. You have 20 seconds to go back to where you're from. You will no longer see your children again. Anything that is humanly possible has been done."
"Then I'll break every bone in your body for saying that!"
But Ryotaro grabs him and slams him onto the pavement.
"I don't think you're in any position to threaten me, yokai,"
Ryotaro snarled.
"You should have thought that before you pretended truly believing the capital princess to your children. It was you who killed them."
Then the wailing from the females becomes shrieks of laughter, which is too much for Mrs. Pratchett.
"No!"
she screamed and begins to cry, motivating to look inside the caskets.
"My babies!"
Before she had the chance, her husband got up to his feet and stopped her. "It won't happen yet," Ryotaro said. "But without the girl, you both know what awaits them. A sudden, merciless death. You'll see."
"Everyone will."
Then Mrs. Pratchett screamed hysterically as her husband drags her away. He knew that the children are still in that Zeppelin when it broke loose. But unless Princess Kitty makes herself known, they won't be safe for long. Satisfied, and already aware that the storm has begun, Ryotaro smirked and said to the other kitsune, "Kodono had its chance to welcome her. Too bad the city blew it. There's more to come." On the street, Cruisers and motorbikes, led by a black panel truck, slowly passed through, urging the onlookers to disperse. A female voice echoes from the loudspeakers, mounted on the roof, slow, deliberate, and oddly calm.
Attention, all citizens. Attention, all citizens. By order of the Kodono Police, you are kindly requested to remain calm. Do not panic. The helium inside the dirigible Providence will not explode. Do not block the street. Clear the area for assistance.
More and more people look up to see the helpless Providence drift off further above the city. Mr. and Mrs. Pratchett approach one of the officers on his motorbike.
My children are in that Zeppelin, she cried out. How are they? Are they going to be all right?
I'm sure they'll be fine, miss, the officer said. And I do hope that man on the rope still holds on. Now move along. As the panel truck and the cruisers stream along, just then, the family car slows to a halt in front of Mr. and Mrs. Pratchett. Grandpa Jack was at the wheel. Dad, are you okay? Mr. Pratchett cried. Grandpa Jack spoke in a cracked tone, as if in suffocation. Chances are, he's not okay. How could I ever be okay? These strong winds sometimes come up in the summer. I saw it happen to Tom and Audrey inside the dirigible. From down here, I can barely hear them screaming for help, which didn't come for them. It didn't come for them. He then laughed, a small, sad laugh. No, not it. Not it. She. Dad, please listen, Mr. Pratchett said. If you're upset, it's not your fault. We're not even mad at you after you confront me back home. It wasn't your fault either. Do you think you caused this dirigible to fly out of control? Do I? Hell, it may be a possibility for an old man like me. Oh, what am I saying? I was the one who coaxed him to board that dirigible in the first place. Of course it is my fault. Don't say that. Son, I was a fool. An idiot to believe such things, Grandpa Jack said. It was my beliefs of Princess Kitty that brought me to this. I really am irresponsible to my grandchildren after all. He turned to Mrs. Pratchett. I should have listened to you from the start. I shouldn't have left home. Truth be told, instead of your children, it should have been me who's on board when the strong wind hits. Then the rest of your grandparents would— Stop it! Mr. Pratchett shouted. Don't you ever say that! Mrs. Pratchett began to wail again. Will they be safe? She demanded. Please tell me. Safe? Grandpa Jack asked. How in the world could they be safe when they are at least hundreds of feet up in the air? I know for a fact that you are never going to forgive me. They're now in danger because of me, of what I believe in. Stop it! Mr. Pratchett screamed, shaking his father. No! Grandpa Jack snapped, pushing his son off. I'm a horrible person for letting this happen, and you know it! They've waited for 3 weeks, but she didn't come. You'd like to know why? It's because people like you choose to believe in what is real and nothing else. How long are you two going to continue doubting? Probably for the rest of your lives, I'm betting. Then where is he? Where is Princess Kitty? Mrs. Pratchett screamed. I don't want my children to die! Do you really think I know where she is? She may be anywhere, because I don't know. I worry about her grandchildren as much as you do, but unless she shows herself, I think they are done for. Therefore, to everyone in the city, there is no such thing as Princess Kitty of KAWAII Wonderland.
like everyone, you can just keep telling yourself that she does not exist. And we all know what to think. Our thoughts of precision and order. People still do for the past 200 years. Mrs. Pratchett, unable to speak, buries her face on her husband's shoulder and bawls uncontrollably, hysterically about the fate of their poor children. Grandpa Jack continued. It's just what the mayor said after all. He said, my city welcomes real people and not imaginary friends. Is that a good enough answer for you? However, none of this changed the fear that she felt gripping her body. You know what? Grandpa Jack continued. Get in the car. I'm taking you two home. But I won't be joining you, suspecting that the others only demand my head rather than their oatmeal. I'll be going anywhere, so I cannot upset you further with talks of Princess Kitty anymore. There's nothing you two can do to help those grandchildren now. But if they're lucky enough to get out of this alive, the first thing they're going to do when they get home is to throw away all their toys and their fun and start growing up, while they have thoughts of precision and order. They head inside the car in the back seat. No, Dad! Mr. Pratchett shouted. Wherever you go, we go too! To hell with everything! Where will you be taking us besides back home? Mrs. Pratchett asked. Grandpa Jack said, Probably Market Square, where the historic clock tower stood. It could only mean one thing. Despite what Grandpa Jack had said, Mr. Pratchett still knew that all of this was his fault to begin with, and he knows what he must do. All he had to do now is to truly believe in her. But where could she be? Although Princess Kitty woke up disoriented after she's been unconscious for a long while, that's when her ears prick up with the faint sound of trumpets. She carefully got up to her feet and walked several feet before she can see a crystal ball rolling towards her, and her father, King Cat, materialized in front of her. Should you be glad that your expedition is finally over, and you can finally meet the children again? The king asked, most proudly.
I am,
she said.
It's just that...
Kitty, you can tell your father anything. What is it? What upsets you this time?
I want to meet the children at the fairground. It's the people. I don't want to be seen by them, because I know that they never believe in anything anymore after they grow up. After they get their head out of the clouds and keep their feet on the ground.
So, you've decided to ditch the fair and end up here instead. Her father sounded harsh and angry, but his face showed small sadness. She nodded. I see, he said. What about your grown-up friends? Do you make any more?
Father, they're not enough,
she said.
At least I've tried my best. I already know there's 300,000 people in the city, and now they're all against me, even though they hadn't met me.
And what about the children? What would they say if you're not here with them today?
Father, they'll have to understand that the city would remain ordinary without someone like me. Things are not working out, and I want to go home. You told me I could yourself from the very beginning.
I have said that. It's just that me and your mother knew what had to be done when we sent you here, don't we? We just wanted you to be happy.
If you want me to be happy for the rest of my life, you let me go back to the kingdom. At least the citizens of KAWAII Wonderland always welcome me with open arms. What is the point of existing here in this world if I'm not welcomed here? I'm driven away from the city, Father. They all want me gone!
He didn't answer,
even though he can hear the grief in her voice. Instead, he crossed his arms. Then I'm very disappointed in you, Kitty, for letting these skeptical people do this to you, after everything you've done to them, he glared. In doing so, not only you've let your own father down, but you've also let your mother and every single creature back in the kingdom down as well. You know better not to abandon your own destiny.
And to hell with destiny,
she whispered. Kitty, I've brought you here expecting you to fit in, regardless of how difficult it became. Right now, I fear it's all come down to this. Once and for all, this world shall be your home, and you will not be going back to KAWAII Wonderland expecting a grand return, because you will not get it. Even if you didn't know, your mother and I are proud that you have worked this far to get to where you are now. And we do not have the time, nor the nerve, to have you throw it all away like it was nothing. Do I make myself clear?
Yes!
She wailed.
You really want to make me happy. So I shall. In the end, to the citizens, I must be believed to be seen. Even if they don't, I have to make myself feel right at home, continuing to do great things for them. I would even give my life for them.
I was hoping you'd say that, he said proudly. So, do you know what must be done now?
I know what I have to do, Father. I don't care if I'll be seen by thousands of people. I don't care!
She got down on her knees, crying, her hands on the fresh grass, claws digging into soil.
Oh, Todd,
she wailed.
Oh, Audrey. I shall meet you two once again. How much you two have grown on me after leaving you for several weeks. How much we've bonded with one another. Because of you two, the Earth, this planet is now my home. I will not let anyone, any doubter, take it away from me.
Then the king nodded in agreement and smiled before he faded without further ado. She looked up and saw that he was gone. She immediately rises to her feet with her arms up in the air and her face to the heavens.
Father!
She screamed.
Father! I know what I had to do! I will make the children happy again by showing up at the fairground. I deserve to exist in this world. I will not rest or yield until my destiny is fulfilled. The Earth is my home. I will not let anyone take it away from me.
But the sound of a female voice perked up her ears. She looked around to find a black paneled truck passing through the street. The loudspeakers mounted on the roof echo out. Then she can see people running towards the park, towards Market Square, along with their shrieks of, "Where's the dirigible?" and "It's going near those buildings!" She ran towards the panicking folk.
Wait a minute!
She cried.
What's happening? And what about the dirigible?
One man, George Beaumont, stopped and said, "Haven't you heard? The dirigible Providence was blown by the wind. The rope snapped off and is flying out of control from the fairground. There's also a man hanging on to one of them. By now he's awfully close to those buildings." Her ears went up in shock.
Where?
She demanded.
Where did you see it?
It was around the corner and then... But he has no words to describe. "Oh, you gotta see for yourself. It's going towards the city."
Come on, stupid!
Gilbert Hanley snapped, with his wife at his side.
We don't want to miss it!
And then George ran off, along with Gilbert and Belle. Princess Kitty calls out to the group.
Hey, wait!
But they're already out of her sight. She's now alone. By then, there's nothing else to do, except see the events herself through Mirame. She closed her eyes and lowered her head. she can see a large wind gust catching the Zeppelin at the fairground and starts to whip it around. The mooring crew tries to bring it under control, but the Zeppelin breaks free and rises upward, shedding the mooring crew until only Giff, one of her friends who was on the Maybelle, and a patrol car used to help anchor the Zeppelin, are left hanging. But he's not the only one at risk. In the control cabin, joining the Zeppelin crew, were the two friends she cares about for the past weeks, Todd and Audrey Pratchett. They board the Zeppelin like they always wanted, yes, but now they're in danger, and if she doesn't do something, they will surely be doomed. It could only mean one thing. She cannot stay hidden forever, and she must do something about it. Princess Kitty opened her eyes and screamed before she sprints out of the park. She leaped from facade to facade until she's up on the roof. She ran and leaped from roof to roof as she now hears her father's voice over and over again. My daughter, it is time for you to make your presence be known throughout. Then another voice overlapped her father's.
If only the people in the city can see you.
It was Todd. Then another voice overlapped Todd's.
Poor little children! Alas, that the day may never come!
It was her own voice. She closed her eyes and screamed out into now.
No! Never! This is my home!
Not knowing where would she end up in, she ran faster and faster until she reaches a tall bank with gray roof tiles called the Miyazaki Bank and Loan. She makes a long leap toward the roof of the bank, but she slams her chest at the ledge, and she almost falls off. She frantically grabs onto the gutter with her claws protruding from her fingers. She hoists herself up onto the roof and climbs to the top before she can finally open her eyes. Looking around, they went wide and unable to look away. Like the citizens, she saw the Zeppelin with the tail sticking up in the air as it drifts across the sky. There she had a realization that prevents her from saving the day and redeem herself to the city. What she was afraid was going to happen, happened. She deliberately left her scepter at the apartment at Garofalo Street before going to the park. She decides to go and get it. Suddenly, a loose roof tile under her foot breaks and slid off, causing her to trip and slide down, screaming and falling off the Miyazaki Bank and Loan. But she still learns one thing. If she falls, she has to turn her body around and land on all fours. After making the landing, she stood up and saw Cameron's Mercedes screech to a stop beside her. He sticks his head out the car window and saw the broken roof tiles around her boots. You saw the dirigible up in the sky too, didn't you, Kitty? He asked. Aren't you going to do something about it? She turned away. Kitty! He calls out. Please listen. Now I know you're upset, turning away as if you caused the dirigible to fly out of control, but you didn't. Right now, they're all depending on you. The disaster will only get worse from here if you don't stop it. Are you afraid to be seen? But she didn't listen, and he gives up. Okay, I understand. I won't bother you again, because I'm going to Main Street near Market Square. But if you change your mind, I have nothing else to say but to wish you good luck. I know you will do what is right, Princess Kitty. Because I believe in you. Her ears perk up and turns back to see him, but he already drives off. Furious, she ran to a corner, hoping she could find him, but there was no sign of the Mercedes. She can hear the same female voice blaring in the distance with the same message. Attention, all citizens. Attention, all citizens. By order of the Kodono Police,
You are kindly requested to remain calm. Do not panic. The helium inside the dirigible Providence will not explode. Do not block the street. Clear the area for assistance.
With fear still gripping on her concern of the children, when she saw the Zeppelin again, she ran up the sidewalk, hoping that it wasn't out of her sight. But a crowd was in her way. The superstitious people.
There she is!
A woman pointed.
Stop her!
Cat girl! Cat girl! The crowd wailed as they gang up on her.
Are you sure you're not hostile?
A boy asked.
Are you responsible for the dirigible disaster?
A woman asked.
What's your sign? A man asked. I'm a Capricorn.
Please respond,
A woman demanded.
We must know now.
Looking around, Princess Kitty knew there was no way to escape. She can only watch helplessly as the Zeppelin drifts away and disappears above the buildings before the group closed her in, assaulting her with desperate questions. She found it hard to get the words in her throat out of her mouth. She wanted everyone to leave her alone, so she can do what is right. Yet they don't let her go that easy. Closing her eyes, her face turns red, and she screamed. It's so deafening that the numerous people all cover their ears in pain and all disperse. She ran up the street in vain, searching the sky desperately for the runaway Zeppelin, trembling with righteous anger and fear, all while screaming out at the top of her lungs. But she can feel herself exhausted and had to stop at a street lamp next to Charlotte Lenoir. The Zeppelin may be long gone by then. Charlotte cast her gaze to the cat girl and noticed how stressed and scared she looked. When the people gang up on her again, only Miss Lenoir stopped them in their tracks.
You leave her alone! All of you stay away from her!
They all back away. Charlotte placed a hand on the girl's shoulder, but she already breaks down in tears, still holding on to one thing, and she made it clear.
How could I be so ignorant?
What? Charlotte asked.
Without my scepter, I'm powerless!
Princess Kitty wailed.
I'm almost like one of you people. I won't be able to save my friends from the dirigible. It is my fault I'm not at the fairground where that happened. Who knows what would happen to them now? They're the only children I've known who made this planet my home. I'll never forgive myself if they die.
Then she spoke no more. She just lowered her head and bawled her heart out. However, she was suddenly yanked up onto her feet. Then she met Charlotte's face. Charlotte raised her hands to her glasses. Then she stopped. Instead, she crossed her arms and glared at the poor cat girl. What is worse, by not showing up at the fairground, you choose to stop the storm from causing misfortune, Charlotte growled. Now it's too late to stop it, and it's getting worse from here.
How is it going to be worse from here?
Princess Kitty demanded. Well, you're in luck, aren't you? Charlotte smirked. And you won't be the only one who's going to see what I really am. Princess Kitty's eyes widened, telling all about the undiluted disbelief raging in her mind. With everybody, including Princess Kitty, looking at her, Charlotte began to transform as she became taller and covered in fur, causing her clothes to stretch. Her bosom became even larger as her ears shifted to the top of her head and became pointed, causing her earrings and her glasses to fall off. One of the lenses cracked when it hit the sidewalk. Her teeth grew into fangs as her face became cat-like and her eyes becoming yellow with black slit pupils, and her tail jutting out from behind. She glared at Princess Kitty before she turned and snarled with a loud hiss at the crowd, catching them off guard. Some women faint at the sight of her. Some children scream and cry in terror at the sight of her. Seeing that the crowd begins to flee, she barked, "Have you no shame, you foolish, stupid people?" You know, this is exactly how you react when you encounter creatures like me. You don't even know if they're harmless. You just had to misjudge them, just like you misjudged that girl. Hearing those words, Princess Kitty backs away, but the Cat Queen turns and walks towards her, stepping on her glasses that were on the sidewalk with a crack. "I think you have something that belongs to me. Anata ga kinishi nai nara." Princess Kitty nods, and she pulls out a brass bell with a black handle from between her flat cleavage, before giving it to the Cat Queen.
I knew I wouldn't save the day by myself. Unless someone can help me,
Princess Kitty said. "Motomo gimu ga aremasu," purred the Cat Queen, raising her bell up in the air and walked to the middle of the street. "I will make you inevitable." The onlookers grew silent as she rings her bell. There was a ringing sound before silence. The people gathered round and filled the sidewalk, staring at the Cat Queen with the bell in her hand. But they feel a vibration under their feet. "Hey, do you feel that?" a man asked. "Yeah, I do," another said. "Could that be a water main?" Another said. "I don't think so." They now hear a low, rumbling, roaring sound. The noise builds, getting louder and louder for a few seconds. Then, there's a terrific jolt. It's hard for people to stand up. Buildings creak and rattle. Loose tiles came raining down. People are shouting and screaming. The shaking is making church bells ring in the distance. Trees are swaying and scraping against the walls. The Cat Queen remains standing still in the street, her face unchanged, the bell still in her hand. Suddenly, the facade of one of the closed shops explodes, showering cars and unlucky pedestrians with glass and steel. The huge cat bus seemed to burst from the guts of the shop and landed on the street in front of her. For one moment, she faced him, frozen as a wave about to break. The cat bus faced her back. The people all froze as she ran towards him, hugging as much of his face as possible. While the bus used its huge tongue to lick her face, she backed off. "My darling," she said, "you got here just in time at the day's darkest hour." He purrs as he bends down. One of the windows stretched downward, becoming a door. She immediately heads inside.
That's exactly right, Cat Bus!
Princess Kitty shouted and ran towards him.
Therefore, I now ask you a favor.
The cat bus nods, growling at her.
Save the children, little Todd and Audrey, from peril and death, she said. They say that the dirigible is blowing towards the city, toward unmerciful disaster. And if you love them as much as you love me, then you must do something about it!
The glowing eyes glared as he sucks in a double lungful of air and lets it out in a huge resonating roar directly at her face. People scream in terror while covering their ears. There was a sound of windows cracking and the ground shook as the roar pierced the area. The destination sign on the cat bus read, "Todd and Audrey." The Cat Queen calls out. However, don't ever get your hopes up on your friends, Kitty. The worst is about to begin. Then the cat bus sprints off. As the monster charged through the street, Princess Kitty leaped from facade to facade and landed on the rooftops. From here, through terror, she can see the helpless Providence as it drifts toward an unexpected destination, which is, in fact, to everyone's concern, the most recognizable and historic landmark in the entire city. the Market Square clock tower. She knew what the Cat Queen had meant. She knew that without her scepter, it is inevitable. The collision course was the worst. With a scowl, she said to herself,
I hope they're not too late.
Just before 2:20, Flanagan and the other officers who were in the balcony of another building received word of the dirigible coming this way to Market Square. Norm immediately orders a complete evacuation of the area. Officers rush inside the apartments and up the stairwells, their fists pounding on doors, along with the shouting of, "You are ordered to evacuate immediately, by order of the Cardona Police. Leave everything but your pets, if you had any," towards the perplexed residents. But outside, people scream in a mass panic as the Zeppelin drifts nearer and nearer to oblivion. A voice of instruction can be heard in the square from the loudspeakers on the panel truck. You've been kindly requested to evacuate Market Square, but do so in a calm and orderly manner, by order of the Cardona Police. Please, do not panic. Panicking will only put your life and others at risk. Remember, the helium inside the Providence will not explode. Drop what you're doing and evacuate in an orderly manner. But even the voice of Cardona won't help. Not when the dirigible begins to tower above the crowd like a huge, gray monster. The Pratchett's arrive in the midst of the evacuation of Market Square. Looking around, Grandpa Jack said, "May heaven help them shows if they get hurt." "But what will become of the children?" Mrs. Pratchett cried. "If anything bad happens to them," Mr. Pratchett said, "I want you to know, no matter what, that all of this is my fault to begin with." "I don't care what you say," Grandpa Jack said. "Only a fool would believe such a thing." "You can call it whatever you like, Dad. Where is Princess Kitty?" "So you can truly believe in her?" "She may be anywhere." "Then we're going to find her, Dad. No matter where she is, we will find her. As long as things calm down for a while." He can hear an officer calling out while approaching the car. "Excuse me! You're not supposed to be here. I'm afraid you have to turn your car around. This square is being evacuated." But the Pratchett's now hear the people scream, "The Providence is coming right for us! It's heading towards the tower!" Mrs. Pratchett immediately got out of the car and saw the helpless Providence. "What do you think you're doing?" the officer said. "Get back in your car and turn back now! Turn back!" When she saw the Zeppelin making a collision course with the Market Square clock tower, she immediately screamed, "Oh God! The blimp is going to crash!" Mr. Pratchett got out of the car and takes hold of his wife. "Love, turn away! Turn away and close your eyes!" "Then it really is your fault, son," Grandpa Jack said somberly. "Wherever Kitty is, she has to do something about it." Up on one of the buildings, Dorothy Chandler begins her report on the microphone. Cameron, with his filmo, was relocated here to film for the newsreel. "This is Dorothy Chandler reporting. Joining me today is newsreel cameraman Cameron Christian Copley as we take you on the roof of one of the buildings near Market Square. Down into the square, there has been panicking by the hundreds in spite of instructions from the Cardona Police given by the voice of Cardona. Even the residents who live in the apartments were ordered to evacuate with their pets. So far, nothing has happened to the man who's clutching on the rope for dear life yet, but I've been reported that the Providence is being blown by the wind and is approaching the city's clock tower about 100 feet in front of it. If it continues and the wind doesn't shift, the Providence will inevitably smash into the tower." In the control cabin, Audrey can hear Norma's voice blaring from his megaphone. "Attention, Captain of the Providence! This is Norm McCrae of the Cardona Police, Division 6. Your dirigible is about to make a collision course with the city's clock tower. Pray that the wind shifts or your crew gain more altitude to avert a collision. If there's nothing you can do, brace for immediate impact. You only have 40 seconds before the dirigible smashes into the tower."
We've got to do something, or else the blimp will hit the tower!
Audrey cried, horrified by the news. I'm sorry, little girl. The captain shook his head sadly. But we don't have enough helium. There's nothing else we can do but brace for impact. Your brother, too. She began to cry. But Todd takes her hand and shouted, Sis! Don't cry and hang on to something! Hold on tight and never let go! The clockmaker saw the Zeppelin heading towards the tower, and he runs out of harm's way as Gift saw him. Then, to everyone's horror, the inevitable happened. With a sickening crunch, the helpless Providence smashes nose first into the clock tower. The impact is so great, it even took out the entire steeple, as bricks and debris from the Zeppelin, even the bronze statue of Ezra Cardono that was on top of the steeple, rained down into the square below. Despite the disaster, Market Square has been successfully evacuated. But the worst, to those who are still inside the Zeppelin, is yet to come. The impact causes the bumper to break off of the police cruiser as it plummets down, smashing into pieces on impact. Gift's heart dropped as he is balancing on the top of the bumper. He tried to scream, but seeing that it's a 13-story drop to the solid pavement, his throat became paralyzed. When Princess Kitty saw the Providence crash into the tower, even her heart had dropped.
Oh, Cat Bus!
She cried.
Cat Bus, you better hurry! And hope the people of this city didn't scream in terror at the sight of you!
The people on the streets should scream in terror at the sight of the cat bus, as he continues to plow through. Bystanders moved out of his way as he bulldozes everything in his path, including parked cars, mailboxes, lampposts, trash cans, and even a fire hydrant, turning it into a man-made geyser. He barges through Main Street, only to have his head struck the side of the red streetcar. He snarled in pain as he hears the terrified screams inside the streetcar. Glaring at the terrified people, he bellows and rams his head again, intentionally. The streetcar immediately derailed and toppled onto the side. Passengers were thrown onto the ground, landing on the broken windows or each other. Bellowing again, he swats his paw at the overhead wires. Sparks immediately fly when they were snapped. Behind him, cars screeched to a halt, but that only caused a pileup. Glaring at the pedestrians who are getting out of their cars and running, he bellows again and is about to come after them. But he can hear the Cat Queen snarl, "I hope you're not forgetting something up ahead." He turned to look at the clock tower, with the upside-down Zeppelin crashed on top of it. He knows that the children are up there, and he knows that Princess Kitty is depending on him to save them. The Cat Queen looks at the clock tower and grins wider. Well, what do you know? Something terrible really happens in the city after all. At this moment, all the screaming, all the running, and all the panic. That's what I really call a celebration. Don't you agree, darling? The engineer became anxious, knowing the severity of the situation. Oh, she chuckled. How silly of me. Then his arm was suddenly taken hold of, and he was jerked out of the seat to meet her eyes as she snarled. You wouldn't agree! Let me go! He demanded. I never knew Ryotaro could be this truthful in his life. He meant every word. He knew this day would come, and so do I. About that dirigible, with a name like Providence, it is ironical, meaning a timely preparation for future eventualities, she said. But it also meant fate, divine intervention, which I personally allow to teach these people a lesson. Right now, this is what I call divine punishment. Punishment against Cardono, and all who lived there, which they didn't welcome the Princess Kitty, for she had been on Earth long enough. Should the city choose to listen earlier, none of this would have happened, darling. They didn't. As far as I'm concerned, the people have had all their chances in this particular area. But now it's far too late. Not even their thoughts of precision and order will make them recover, and the worst is just getting started. And the people at Market Square? Why, they're sure to have a front row seat to oblivion. And you know what's going to be so very special about this day? By the time it's over, I'm certain that Kodono will remember this day as much. How dare you say that? He demanded. She roared at his face. Come on! The word acts like a bullet through his skull. He reeled back, his face blank with so much fear at so much anger from the monster before him. We knew this would happen, she said. I meant every word. She brings forth Haruka and Minako from the basket. My darlings, Mother wants you to do something for me. You know exactly what I want. Then she began speaking slow and hard. Bring him to me. If he resists, you have my permission to play with him on the way. But you must promise me that he remained alive and in one piece. He gasped at the realization of what she'll do to Mayor Donovan. The cat snarled.
Anything for you, Mother.
They went out of the cat bus, growing to about 4 feet, and standing on their hind paws. They went off somewhere in the city. Maybe Kodono will open its eyes and welcome her this time, purred the Cat Queen. Won't it? She ain't here, is she? He asked. I hate it when you say things like that, boss. Makes me blood turn to ice, creeping down me spine. Please tell me we ain't going up there. And let Todd and Audrey die horribly? She asked, and turned to the bus. The Princess Kitty won't be pleased to hear that, wouldn't you agree, Cat Bus? Perhaps a change in destination is much obliged. The destination sign on the Cat Bus read, Clock Tower. The Cat Bus bellows and heads off through Main Street, but a vengeful figure blocked his path, causing him to halt. That figure was none other than Constance Malchance. She was recently purchasing ammunition for emergency purposes at the gun store. When she saw the cat bus again, and after remembering what happened the last time she saw it, she pulls no stops. Armed with a Winchester rifle, she screamed, Hold it! Inside the cat bus, the Cat Queen mutters, So the Devil Woman decides to step in the way again. Guess she wouldn't mind if I show her Queen's wrath. It is my intention to make sure that she is well advised to remember. Hearing the cat bus snarling at Constance, the Cat Queen demanded, Aren't you always loyal to me? Yes? Then either you show me by making a meal out of her, or I'll get her out of your whiskers for you. Behind his lips, he boomed at Constance in a low growl, hardly audible. Get out of my way. I'm placing you under citizen's arrest, she barked, loading her rifle. Either you stand down, or I'll put you down! In front of her, he roars in defiance, but he lowers his hollow body to the ground. Inside, the Cat Queen whispered, petting the cockpit. Wise decision. Constance was satisfied. But she didn't know that it's the Cat Queen's turn to take action. When the Cat Queen steps out of the bus, Constance has her rifle at her, accusingly.
Are you the one responsible for destroying my jalopy and devouring my dog?
A false accusation is as deadly as a sword, a club, or a sharp arrow, the Cat Queen sighed. However, I consider your pet as an appetizer. You are lucky he doesn't make you the main course. You don't ever tell my boss what to do, or threaten him. Continue on, and you'll only get in more trouble than you're already in.
What are you going to do about it? Assault me? I'll blow you full of lead, you freak!
Freak. You stupid, stupid woman. Clearly, you haven't heard of me before, but I've heard of you. I once saw you giving 2 children and their father such a hard time as felines gleefully parade onto a street without breaking their stride. I once saw you lay a finger on my cats. Suddenly, she bares her huge fangs and hisses towards Constance. Constance fires a warning shot in the air.
I'm not going to tell you again!
Constance screamed. However, the Cat Queen remained unfazed. I can tell right away that you're afraid. Afraid of what I may do. You raise 1 finger at me once more, and I'll make sure Miss Lenoir goes straight to Officer Walrus and Officer Shortfuse. You'll be spending the rest of the summer in the slammer, much to my delectation. Constance shouted, cocking her rifle.
I don't need the police! It's about time I take matters into my own hands!
Are you sure? Purred the Cat Queen. You can be sure you're going to need them when I'm done spending wonderful time with you.
Enough!
Constance screamed.
There will be order! Everything in the city is full of absolute nonsense and irresponsibility! And it will stop right here!
The Cat Queen shook her head. I think you'll be completely disappointed, Devil Woman. I don't think you can. That's when Constance lost her temper and fires her rifle at her, the bullet going through the chest and out the back. The Cat Queen looks down to see there was a hole in her chest, blood blossoming around it. But she didn't go down. Instead, she kept moving. Constance was shocked and slowly retreats at this monster.
How was that?
She screamed.
No!
Without raising her voice, the Cat Queen said, Oh, you don't wish to play with me, huh? She quickly seized the rifle from Constance and breaks it in half over her knee. She threw the pieces away. Too bad. I'm just getting started. Then her body begins to stretch and swell in size, towering over Constance at exactly 15 meters in height. She then knelt down at the frightened Constance.
Now, about what you said to me,
the Cat Queen said, her voice deepening from her sighs.
Everything in the city is full of absolute nonsense and irresponsibility, and it will stop right here? Then may nonsense and irresponsibility be your downfall.
Constance tries to get away, but the Cat Queen already picks her up like a doll. With her hand completely wrapped around Constance's waist, the Cat Queen flung her body right through the gun shop window. The male proprietor was shocked to find the injured Constance lying on the floor and groaning. He rushes over to her to get a better look. However, from out the window, he can see the enormous face of the Cat Queen.
Hands off, darling!
She boomed, baring her fangs at him. He screamed in terror as he ran and hid behind the desk. Hoping that the face isn't here, he popped his head out, only to see the normal-sized Cat Queen calmly came into the shop.
You stay back!
He screamed.
I'll call the police!
but she's now behind him, saying, "Not a bad idea, darling. But you won't call them. I'll do it for you." She protrudes one black claw before digging it into the back of his neck. He instantly goes into convulsions, falling to the floor, gasping and groaning, before he lost consciousness. She looks down at Constance, asking, "You want to hear something funny? Get ready to laugh." Then she picks up the phone and calls the police, her voice changing into that of the proprietors. "Help! Police!" she screamed through the proprietor's voice. "There's a crazy woman attacking my store at Main Street! Come quickly! Get Norman Flanagan! Hurry! Ah!" She trashes some of the store before cutting the phone cord and cackle madly. "I do love playing pretend," she exclaimed. "Makes me feel very expressive about myself." Constance is on the floor, groaning in pain, as the Cat Queen approaches her for the final time. "How cute," purred the Cat Queen. "Trying to take down a Bakeneko, a cat demon? You think that you could possibly stand in my way? You really make me laugh, because you are just as funny as the old man. You can't even compete with the nature of a Bakeneko, and the antics it executes on those who deserve it. People like you." From her coat pocket, she pulls out a folded note with a pink paw print on it, saying, "I'll even let them know that Miss Lenoir has been here." She tosses it aside. "You won't get away with this!" Constance screamed, realizing the creature's identity. "Just imagine what the police has to say to you," purred the Cat Queen. "I wish you the worst of luck, if you want to explain that to the police when they arrive." She cackles like mad and heads out of the gun shop. She walked towards the cat bus, hugging as much of his face as possible, while the bus used his huge tongue to lick her face. She backed off, and hears the engineer call out, "You've bloody went and done it! Causing damage to a store, making a detriment to society out of yourself. They already know what you really are!" "Well, that sure doesn't take long," purred the Cat Queen. "So dies the last semblance of precision and order. And right now, we've got a destination to go to." Mayor Donovan remained at the fairground, where the Providence once moored. He refused to look at the city ahead, even when the dirigible crashed into the clock tower. He knew that this isn't supposed to happen, not during the bicentennial. He sat down on one of the benches, trying to catch his breath. He tried not to move his left arm, for it's still injured. Right now, he can see paramedics carry the injured in stretchers toward the ambulances, while the firemen slowly rescue the guests who are stranded on the Ferris wheel. The sight of the paramedics and the sounds of groaning disgust him. "This isn't supposed to happen," he thought. "Not in my city." Unfortunately, they also filled him with anxiety and dread. Dread at the thought of the children and the dirigible crew, especially the man on the rope. He hoped to God they can be saved. But the unknown cannot be fooled. It is not stupid. It knew that all that has happened was entirely his fault for not welcoming the girl to the city. It sure wasn't done with him. With his left arm blue and swollen, he cannot bear it any longer. He needed help. He got up and headed toward the paramedics. However, he froze when he hears a voice penetrating through the air like a knife. "How's the celebration going so far?" Proudly, publicly, without one incident. He turned and saw Furukawa Ryutaro, his face completely calm and remorseless. Just a sight fills Mayor Donovan with anger. You should be arrested by now. I already told you. Like that's going to stop me, Ryotaro said, moving closer. Well, I don't think it went well, don't you? These aren't my words, because they're yours on the broadcast. There's always a consequence when you don't listen. Lucky for you, and everybody else who lived there, this is only the beginning. Angrily, Mayor Donovan went over to the shooting gallery and picked up an air rifle. Instead of shooting Ryotaro, he swings it towards him.
Get away from me!
Mayor Donovan screamed.
I ought to have you locked up in a padded room! You and Miss Lenoir!
When Mayor Donovan swung at Ryotaro again, Ryotaro grabbed the rifle and threw it aside. Mayor Donovan lost his balance and fell to the ground. He immediately screamed in pain, and he grasped his left arm. I will not fight you, Ryotaro said, glaring down at him. But I know someone who can. 2 of them. Mayor Donovan got up to his feet and find that 2 cats are approaching him. Not ordinary cats, no. Twin black cats who are 4 feet tall and stand on their hind legs. Just the sight filled him with dread. The cats began hissing at him before turning to Ryotaro. That's when they began speaking to him.
We know where to take him.
Haruka snarled.
To Mother.
Minako hissed. Understanding, Ryotaro turned away. Before Mayor Donovan can turn and run, Minako already grabbed him by the left arm. He screamed in pain, thinking that his arm will be ripped off. This shouldn't be happening, he snapped. You 2 aren't supposed to exist. You're nothing but a hallucination.
Can a hallucination do this?
Haruka screamed and slashed him across the cheek. He immediately cried in pain as he felt the burning while touching it.
Do you think a hallucination does that?
Minako taunted.
Perhaps if you close your eyes, you can no longer feel it,
Haruka said.
But we advised against it, because once you close your eyes, they will stay closed forever.
Minako glared.
Now we understand perfectly that you have requested a confrontation with Mother,
Haruka said, and she grabbed him by the other arm. Minako said.
Try not to fight with us,
Haruka said.
We don't want to take you to Mother in pieces, do we?
Up at the clock tower on Market Square, helium begins to leak from the tail end of the Providence. Okay, now I can barely hear the sound of a helium gas leak from the tail, Dorothy Chandler reports on the microphone. We can't see from here what happened to the unidentified male on the rope, but we know that the police cruiser supporting him breaks off and sends it falling to the ground. Suddenly she gasped and screamed, pointing at the Zeppelin. The tail end of the Zeppelin, still leaking helium, comes crashing down on a building across the street. Roof tiles, bricks, and metal parts of the Zeppelin rains down. The Providence precariously balanced itself between the building and the clock tower, 13 stories above ground, as the helium still leaks. Dorothy Chandler reports, while peering out through binoculars.
It's snagged on the building across the street where it's... Hey, wait a second! I can see that the man is still there on the rope! He has his feet onto the loose bumper! It's a miracle! But what about the children and the crew? I hope they're still fine, but then how are they going to save them? If they don't do something, the Zeppelin will become too heavy and break in two like a twig, as more and more helium escapes.
Inside the control cabin, Todd, Audrey, and the crew, battered but okay. Here's the voice of Norm on the megaphone.
Attention, Kata the Providence. Your dirigible may be bound to collapse onto the street, but allow me to give you the positive information to calm you and your crew down. At the point of impact, several fire trucks and a huge crane that was tall enough to reach the control cabin are dispatched. We advise you to stay calm and wait for further instructions when the crane arrives at the tower. Wait a minute. What? What do you mean there's a traffic accident? Saving those children are our main priority. Then I suggest we hurry.
Down at Main Street, the police form a barricade around Market Square with police cruisers. Mr. and Mrs. Pratchett prayed for the children's safety, and 2 more people were accompanying them with Goodwin and Wilde. Their names are Alan and Carol Rogers, Giff's father and mother. Seeing Giff hanging onto the rope, Goodwin gives Carol the megaphone so she can talk to her son.
Giff!
She shouted through the megaphone.
Giff!
Hearing his mother calling from down there, Giff finally found his voice and screamed, hoping for his mother to hear him.
Mom! Mom!
Hearing her son's faint crying, Carol burst into tears. Grandpa Jack comforted her. Mr. Pratchett stopped praying. Turning around, he spots something coming this way and screamed, "Dad!" Grandpa Jack and Mrs. Pratchett joined his side.
What is it, son?
Pointing at what he's looking at from afar, Mr. Pratchett screamed,
What the hell is that?
Grandpa Jack looked, and his eyes widened as he looked straight ahead. Accompanied by screams of shock and terror, the cat bus storms through the street towards Market Square. From the control cabin, the children looked down and gasped.
Todd!
Audrey squeaked.
Look!
What did you see down there? The captain asked. It's the cat bus, Todd said. He's on his way to the tower.
What's it doing here?
One of the crewmen demanded.
Is it dangerous?
No, Todd screamed. He will not hurt anyone. Even though he's scary, he will not hurt anyone. He's on our side. On our side? The captain asked. Are you sure?
Who could bring forth a giant cat monster such as that?
One of the crewmen asked. I can think of one person who would. Princess Kitty, Todd said. We could only report this, the captain said. If only the radio hasn't been broken during this attack by the wind we feel. At one of the buildings where Dorothy Chandler stood, her partner looked down and called out to her, pointing down.
Look down there!
Oh my!
She cried as the cat bus is making its way towards the center of the city. She immediately reports on the microphone. Right now, I can see a huge creature with a hollow body and holes on the side. I know it sounds crazy, but it looks like a cat. A giant cat heading towards the square.
Aside from the dirigible catastrophe, we advise you to stay calm and not make sudden movements. For those who are indoors, remain there.
The bystanders gasped as the cat bus makes his collision course towards the clock tower. They watch helplessly as his ginormous head smashed the side of the tower like a wrecking ball. The wall is intact, but the bumper that supports Giff loosens and falls off, leaving him hanging for dear life. Seeing that, Carol screamed. The cat bus begins to climb the tower like a giant scratching post. Flanagan cried out,
What in the name of Carl Masick?
What's he doing?
Alan asked.
I think he's trying to shade the people from the dirigible,
Grandpa Jack replied.
I've worked in the newsreel business, and I can tell you one thing, Miss Chandler,
Cameron shouted as he films the cat bus, shaking.
That monster is no ordinary cat!
At the tower, while hanging onto the rope for dear life, Giff looks down as the cat bus gets nearer and nearer.
If that thing comes closer to you, you jump and grab onto it!
The captain calls out.
It's the cat bus!
Todd calls out.
I promise he won't hurt you!
The cat queen emerges from the open windshield and walks to the destination side. She looks down at Giff, who is beginning to lose all strength. She calls out to him. Quite an experience to live in a world of wonder, isn't it? Let this be a lesson to those who don't believe. His right hand slips leaving him with one last tenuous grip with his left. She purrs at this progression of events as she went on. In a moment, your grip will be lost, and you fall to your swift and violent death in front of all the people on the ground. That includes your mother and your father. Well, if there's any consolation, I might be able to save you. Or I may not and let you fall. The only question you will ever ask me was, do you deserve to live? Until at last, he can't hold on any longer, and his grip gives way. He manages to scream, "I do!" before he falls. There is an agonizing moment of complete silence as the horrified crowd, including Gift's parents, watch him fall, only for the Cat Queen to extend her arm and grab him by the other hand.
She caught him!
Dorothy Chandler shouts.
The woman with the cat's head happened to stretch her arm to grab him by the hand like it's rubber.
I saw it too, Miss Chandler, Cameron screamed. And I've never seen anything like it.
Now she stretches her arm back and drags the boy inside. It may be weird, but it's an emotional scene, and you've listened it on your radios. But what will become of the children and the dirigible crew?
Once Gift boards the cat bus, the grip on the clock tower gives way and falls straight down, landing on his feet in front of the gasping crowd.
No sudden moves,
Walden instructed.
Back away!
Well, I hope you enjoy your brief role in the cat bus, you bugger! The engineer shouted. Please don't forget to start therapy and cursing boss on the bloody way out! The door opens, and he pushed Gift out and into the hands of officers.
You're all right, son,
they say.
We're just going to get you to a doctor right away, and then you'll go home.
Gift's parents shove them out of the way to get to their son.
That's my son!
Carol screamed.
That's my boy!
Alan shouted.
Mom!
Gift cried when the police get a hold of him.
We'll see you at the hospital when you get there,
Carol cried.
I love you!
I love you too, Mom. You and Dad,
Gift said.
You both know what's best. I'm sure I'll make a very good pianist in London.
While Gift is being taken away, the engineer turns around to see the Cat Queen. Curse me, she said. Why do you ever say such a hurtful thing to me like that, darling? The engineer said.
Like you bloody didn't care much.
She leaned closer to him, menacingly. If you ever say something like that again in front of these people, you'll be spending the rest of your days learning how to talk with no tongue. She looks around at the terrified bystanders. What is the matter, people? She taunts. What are you afraid of? Me? Or the bus? Is it his claws, his fangs, his eyes?
Miss Cat!
Grandpa Jack calls out.
You know that I'm not afraid of him. I just saw you shape Gift. We all did.
Not to mention, you never cease to flatter me.
What about our grandchildren? They're still up there.
Please save them!
Mrs. Pratchett wailed.
Save my babies!
And the crew of the Providence!
Mr. Pratchett screamed.
You've got to save them!
With her grin even wider, the Cat Queen walked over to him until they're only inches apart. And then what, darling? She asked, sounding angrily underneath her perpetual grin. Let you persuade him to get their head out of the clouds and keep their feet on the ground and start growing up? Please, he said. You have to listen! Well, why should I? A creature that isn't real to you. As luck would have it, you're not the only person who suffered today. Luckily, my adorable little cats are willing to bring him to me. He can see the crowd slowly disperse. She smirked dangerously. And not a moment too soon. The crowd looks on in shock as her cats Haruka and Minako bring the feeble Mayor Donovan towards their owner like furry prison guards. His hair was messy, his lip was cut, and his left cheek had a few scratch marks. Once he's in front of her, the cats force him to get on his knees. They address the crowd that he's trying to fight with them, so they have to hurt him real bad for it. Seeing that he hangs his head down like a condemned man on his way to the gallows, the cats pull his head up from his hair so he can be face to face with their perpetually grinning owner. "Looks like we've met before, have we not?" she asked. "You and your council." He said nothing to her, staring blankly at those glaring yellow eyes and those huge fangs. "Yes? No?" she asked. "Then I'd be happy to jog your memory." He and the crowd watch as her fur and ears molt away, becoming human like everyone else, or Charlotte Lenoir as she is called. Well, only her head at least. The crowd recoil in shock, including Mr. and Mrs. Pratchett. Mayor Donovan felt a lump bob up and down in his throat, as he did recognize that face from the boardroom, and she can see it.
"So you're Miss Lenoir?"
He seized up. "So you did recognize me when I'm this, don't you, darling?" Charlotte asked, smirking. "That's because I had to blend in. And you want to know something funny about it? I don't have to blend in anymore." Then she transformed back and snarled loudly at his face. The cats release him. "If I didn't know better, I think you might have promised these city folk a glorious bicentennial celebration without a tiny little incident," she continued. "But this," she pointed at the Providence that was snagged between the clock tower and the opposite building. He got to his feet and looked up at where she's pointing. "This isn't exactly what they had in mind, is it, darling? Care to tell me why?" Rage overcame him. He turned and lunged for her, but she grabbed him by the throat and threw him across the crowd, which catches him. He points threateningly at her while holding his neck.
"It's because of you!"
he screamed.
"You have something to do with this! You caused the catastrophe, didn't you? Didn't you?"
Of course. You would think that, all to make yourself look good, and make me and other creatures like me look like the antagonist of this story, which we are not, she said. I already give these people the chance to welcome the Princess Kitty to Kodono, and I don't think they ever do, because they had to keep their feet on the ground. She turned to the crowd behind her. Right, Mr. Takahata? Emerging from the crowd was Satoru Takahata, who's making his way towards Mayor Donovan. Upon looking at the former councilman, the mayor becomes even more subdued. Takahata's face glared darkly at him once he stood close to him. You want to know what else is funny? She said. He used to be one of your councilmen before you fire him for what he believed in. She turned to Takahata and said, Now. Before Mayor Donovan can say anything, Takahata slugs him in the face, sending him flying back against the wall. The mayor moved forward, but Takahata already pins him, slugging him again, this time in the midsection, making him groan and fell to the ground. The mayor tried getting up, but Takahata pushed him back down with his foot before kicking him again and again and again. Police officers closed in to arrest Takahata, but the cats hissed at them, forcing them to step back. Takahata grabs the mayor before slamming him against one of the cars. Another punch to the midsection was delivered to the mayor before Takahata throws him to the ground. With his foot, he rolls the mayor over. Mayor Donovan looked up in shock, panting for breath. in agony. Takahata spits the mayor hard in the face before walking off, leaving the cats to hiss at the mayor, who pulls himself to his knees, doubling over and coughing up blood, a result of his refusal. Hopefully, Donovan, that little incident with the dirigible will teach you and your city a lesson, won't it? Purred the Cat Queen. You were warned, but you didn't listen. Therefore, you let it happen. Kadono lets it happen. Then he slowly walked towards the crowd. The Cat Queen walked toward the Pratchett's, who were already stressed from Takahata's brutality. They were no different for the rest of the crowd. Don't even think I forgot all about you, she said. You know, instead of saving those children, I should just leave them up there. Oh yes. Why not let Precision and Order save them and the crew instead? But if Precision and Order doesn't, then the children won't have to grow up and throw away their toys, throw away their fun, and throw away the Princess Kitty. Wouldn't that be swell? No! Mrs. Pratchett screamed and burst into tears. She immediately thought of the 2 white caskets, the inevitable death that awaits the both of them. Even Grandpa Jack swallowed in a throat that's suddenly dry. I get it! Mr. Pratchett pleaded. I deserve everything that I get for not believing in Princess Kitty! Maybe you should have wished that bad things won't happen to that old blimp and the children inside it when she isn't present at the fairground like the mayor, purred the Cat Queen. I'm really sure the Princess Kitty will like to hear that, darling. But alas, she isn't here on the square, is she? Just think, he began, but she cuts him off. And why isn't she here? She demanded. When he's too scared to speak, once again she snarled and pinned him against a wall. Well? She asked. Leaning closer, she can hear him whisper. Because she's not real. She snarled into his face, saying, and guess what? Neither am I. She strikes him before storming towards the cat bus. Mrs. Pratchett attempted to stop her, grabbing her by the coat. No! Stop! Please! Mrs. Pratchett screamed. Don't leave them up there! You gotta save them! My children! You can't leave them! The Cat Queen hissed loudly and backhands her, knocking her onto the ground. Then the Cat Queen hoists Mrs. Pratchett by the hair, causing her to scream in pain. Pretty soon, Mrs. Pratchett met those yellow eyes and those sharp fangs. Oh, so you really expect someone who doesn't exist to come save those 2 sweet little children from death so they can grow up later? The Cat Queen sneered. Leave her alone! Mr. Pratchett screamed and runs after her. But the cats stopped him, hissing at him with their fangs bared. She released his wife. Just be glad she didn't suffer when I mentioned her. But look on the bright side. Good luck having Precision and Order to save them. Oh, and one more thing. Nobody mentioned me about a crane in my path. I guess it's a good thing that wasn't important. The crowd gasped in shock. Just as she boards the cat bus, Mr. Pratchett was already after her, much to her annoyance. He stopped when he stood by the bus door, trying to talk some sense into her. Look! He cried. The tears are welling up in his eyes. I know better now. I knew I should have said those things myself. Haven't I suffered enough? The unknown will let you and your family know if you suffered enough. If you've learned your lesson, she said spitefully. You just have to wait for the dirigible to come crashing down with your children and the crew still in it. Better for the children to die young than to grow up. No! He screamed. Don't say that! You can't do this! They mean everything to me! Just think of them! The ones who believe in her, they're still up there! And they will die! As soon as that Zeppelin collapses into debris! That's the idea. I'm actually looking forward to it. What do you think what's gonna happen? Clearly, you didn't think about the consequence, did you? No! It wasn't the idea! Don't you even care about them? Dad told me that your bus saved those children, didn't it? Then I'm certain it will save them again. Because when they do die, I'll never forgive myself. No! I know what you're thinking. I don't want to hear you say it. If you want me to stop being a grown-up and be a child again, if you want me to clear the thoughts of precision and order out of my head, I will do it. In order for you to save my children, especially the one thing I must do, I promise I will truly believe in Princess Kitty. The tears finally breaking through and falling down to the road beneath them. There was a pause, and she begins to chuckle. So much fun watching people break down these days, she said, the pleased tone in her voice showing her eagerness that he had got the message. Never gets tired after so many centuries. I wish I could feel pity for these people, but even that doesn't bring a smile to my face, does it? Please help my children, he sobbed. I know you will. I'm nothing without them. I will promise nothing. You always remember what I said if I fail, unlike before. They won't have to grow up. Mrs. Pratchett and Grandpa Jack drag Mr. Pratchett away. The door stretches back into a window. The engineer bellowed at the Cat Queen. I can't believe you just said that to people! Pardon? She asked. You're a sick joke to say such things. A masochist, that's what you are! How can you ever say that? I thought you cared for those children. You and your sardonic personality when it comes to such peril. You really are an inhuman sadist, aren't you? She grins wider and seized him by the collar. That's no way to talk to your queen, she whispered. With violent strength, she throws him through one of the bus's windows. He lands on his back, sprawling in front of people. She looks out and sees that the crowd became silent. See? Purred the Cat Queen. That tells you it's not funny when I do that. Then she turns away, while the cats force him to stay down. One hiss at his face. At the rooftop, Dorothy Chandler continues her report, while Cameron was filming the action for the newsreel.
Okay, I don't know what is happening, but this huge bus seemed to look up at the Zeppelin. Wait, what's he doing? I think he's trying to stand on his hind legs. It's extremely doubtful whether it can be done. Oh my, look at that! I'm guessing he weighs a ton, probably 2 tons. What's happening now? Oh! Unbelievable!
The enormous bus took a flying leap up towards the control cabin, one paw gripping the cabin, the other gripping the outer skin of the Zeppelin. He accidentally rips a hole. Helium billows out like a geyser. He manages to rip the door open with his paw. The crew looked down in shock, but the children weren't afraid. and urges them to stay calm. "Don't be scared," Todd shouted. "The cat bus isn't going to hurt you."
"It's dear Puss," Audrey cried. "She's coming to save us."
Get back!
The captain ordered.
Someone's coming up!
Someone did come up. It was the Cat Queen. With her boots on the bus's face, she hoists herself up and into the control cabin. She bowed to the crew and said,
"What's the matter? Scared of dying?"
But her voice is high and squeaky, as if she's breathed in helium. Probably from the Zeppelin. Even she was surprised. She gets rid of the helium in her lungs before talking normal again. "Sorry. It's just the helium in my lungs. I'm trying my best not to be funny this time. Anyway, if you don't want to fall 13 stories to your swift and merciless death, do board the cat bus." The captain calls out to the crew.
Abandon ship! Get on board the cat bus! Board it slowly! Take your time!
The crew hesitantly obliges. One by one, try not to look down, they step on the bus's face and climbs down through the windshield. Audrey embraced the Cat Queen, crying,
"Oh, dear Puss! Dear Puss, you came back!"
"What about Kitty?" Todd asked. "Did she summon you?" "You would think that," purred the Cat Queen. "I've been up to London to visit the Queen and frighten a little mouse under her chair." Then there was a groaning of metal as the lurching of the control cabin becomes gradual. "They have to hurry," Todd said. "The blimp is going to come down any minute." "Never despair," purred the Cat Queen. "We have enough time before it collapses." As soon as the captain and the 12 crew get inside the cat bus, there was another lurch of metal as the control cabin begins to tear out of the permanently disabled Zeppelin. The captain screamed.
Oh God, it's breaking loose!
Sensing this, the cat bus roars as the Cat Queen heads back. "Wait!" Audrey screamed. "We're coming with you!" "Who said I'm saving you too?" purred the Cat Queen. Todd gasped. "What?" "That's not exactly how the story goes, does it, darling? You know someone who could. Oh, if only she decides to exist." Audrey grabbed the Cat Queen's arm. "No," she whimpered. Then the Cat Queen did something unexpected. The Cat Queen hissed at the girl's face, making her back away. The children can only watch as she heads out of the control cabin and into the cat bus. He lets go of the control cabin and plummets into the streets. But the tear is so great as it grew wider and wider. Dorothy Chandler saw this from the rooftop through the binoculars and is shocked. She shouted as tears began to form. "I don't believe of what I'm seeing. The control cabin is about to shear off from the Zeppelin as it's on the brink of collapse. Earlier, this cat bus manages to save the 12 crewmen, including the captain, but without the 2 children, I fear this seems to be our darkest hour. All we can do now is pray. Pray for someone who can help them." Unable to watch any longer, Princess Kitty lands on the street and makes her way back to the apartment in Garofalo Street. She has to save the children now. But stopping her was Ryotaro in his human form. He was in front of her, glaring at her, along with several people.
"Get out of my way!"
she ordered.
"I have to save the children! I have to save my friends!"
"I know you will, Kitty," Ryotaro said calmly, "but not without your royal scepter. First of all, I want you to know who I really am."
"Then who are you? If I don't do something, it'll be too late!"
"I'm different like you, except I exist before you came here." She could have sworn that he begins to sprout white fur all over his body with red marks on his face and his triangular ears. From behind, he sprouts 9 tails with the red marks at the end of them. Her eyes widen, realizing that was his true self.
I know who you really are,
she said.
Another creature from classic mythology, just like the others I encounter. At the same time, I was wondering myself.
You are different from the rest of the unknown, he said. And I'm guessing you've known the unpredictable Cat Queen of the Underground. A conductress to her cat bus. You were the one who summoned her, along with her Bakineko transport and her one-eyed partner. And bringing her here, you happen to make others like her corporeal to those who don't believe in the process. She gave you a bell for you to summon her and the bus anytime you wish. Several people approach her, turning themselves into tanuki. One among them is the woman Princess Kitty met at the cafe, who is transformed into a 2-tailed fox. These tanuki were friends of the Cat Queen, he said. They helped you do great things, like the infamous cat parade. They were the ones who sabotaged the human performers, so you can improvise with the cats you manipulate. They're also responsible for accidentally breaking the clock tower, only for you to fix it. It was the Cat Queen who sent the Master of the Swans to come to your aid if you choose to not help the Maybell crew get home. And what do people in the city do after that? Brush it off. Get their head out of the clouds. We have helped you, because you have brought us here from where we're from. You are indeed the one. A princess like you should be believed by those around you, Mistress Kaiku said. A princess like you should be a guardian to those who are in peril, like the 2 children you care, Gonta said. A princess like you should cause antics to bad people who deserve it, Osho cackled, who happened to wear a woman's bra on his head. A princess like you should make herself at home, Shakuchi said. A princess like you should be welcome to this city like everyone else, Yuaku Suru said, puffing her cigarette.
It was my father who brought me here,
Princess Kitty said.
I should thank him once more, even though he wasn't present.
Ryutaro said, Indeed, this is a story whose chapters were carefully written to our liking. Yours. And it's about to reach the climax. The Cat Queen has orchestrated all this with the greatest care. Everything that's happened, Shakuchi said.
Even the dirigible crashing into the clock tower?
Princess Kate demanded. She didn't cause it to crash, Mistress Kaku said. The unknown did. It was a punishment to this condemned society, and they paid for it.
I didn't know you were brought here from where you're from because of me, because I summoned the cat bus from one of Audrey's drawings,
Princess Kitty said. The cat bus actually exists before you came, Gonta said. And when you didn't show up at the fairground like you're supposed to, the storm which covers all of Kodono has struck, causing terrible misfortune to all who lived here, Mistress Kaku said. And the way people saw it in the sky or on the radio, they simply didn't realize that it was their disbelievability that caused this disaster until it is far too late. The storm had come and strike because of them.
You listen!
Princess Kitty shouted.
There isn't much time left to talk any further. The dirigible is going to collapse, and Tanadu is still inside it. Those two motivated me to stay on Earth, for it is now my home. I forbid myself from ever abandoning them. Gentle Kitsune, I say that you've said enough about me being known to the city. I must head forth to the apartment in Garofalo Street where I left my scepter behind, and then I'll venture towards the Providence and save my friends. In the name of the kingdom, I will do it as right. I must fulfill my destiny!
Puffing her cigarette, Yuaku Suru said to Ryutaro, "You heard her. I think she finally caught up by that much. Give her what she wants." He nodded. Princess Kitty's eyes widen as he brings out her own scepter. "I know what you're thinking," he said. "You want this." Such fine craftsmanship from the kingdom blacksmith. A royal gift for your departure. To tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I've been fascinated with this myself. You really need to start taking care of your things. She immediately reaches out for a scepter. "Give it to me!" she cried. However, he stops her. "I think your day of being welcomed should commence by the time you take this from me. Ask yourself, Princess Kitty of KAWAII Wonderland, what will life truly be like if you didn't set foot on this planet? Will it be worth living? You think the city is better off ordinary? You think you have better luck someplace else?
If you want me to make things right, you give me my scepter! Please!"
And then what? You think when you fulfill your destiny, do you think life will go back to the way it was before you come here? With you here, there shall be no normal life. Not here. Not anywhere else. Not anymore. Your friends, the ones who made you feel right at home, will die when the control cabin is separated and the entirety will come crashing down. Not only you will let them down, you will let your family and everyone from your kingdom down. This is what will happen unless you accept our terms. It's the only way you can save those children.
Then what? What do you want from me, Kitsune? I'll do anything to save my friends.
What every yokai wants. 2 things. You will make yourself known to Kadono. I assure you that your face would make the front pages of every paper across the country. Not even Donovan can silence it. We all know that you cannot be unheard and unspoken. You and your friends will live happily ever after and have the adoration you desperately want. 2. You let us take over the moment you are welcomed. We deserve to exist as much as you do, though you're different from us. Simply, they welcome you. Normal life is over. They don't. We be generous enough to let them figure it out themselves. This is an agreement you will not refuse.
if you want your friends to live, to fulfill your destiny.
I give you my word. I know there's no other way. No other choice.
Are you willing to keep it, Kitty? And are you willing to be aware of the possible consequences if you don't?
She said nothing and lowers her head. However, he barely throws the scepter on the ground in front of her.
You have now reached the climax, he said. From here, the future will open like a great big book with two possibilities. But you will pick only one. If the children die and you're not there to save them, the story ends. You will forever be disgraced. Disgraced to the entire universe, and every eye turning away from you forever. The other, you save the children. This will be the beginning of the end of normal life for the entirety of Kodono. What is your answer, Kitty? You better hurry, because that dirigible is coming down. Remember your word, because she will know.
Then he and the Tanuki walk away, picking up the scepter off the ground. She knew what she must do. She has to fulfill her destiny. In the more unstable control cabin, the children tried not to move. Any motion will tear the cabin off the bottom of the Zeppelin and be smashed into the ground after plummeting at a 13-story drop. They were on their own. Audrey is now crying.
She's not coming, isn't she?
But Todd remained firm and said, "Sis, just hold on to me. Don't cry."
Kitty,
she whimpered.
we're...
Don't talk now. We'll be with her soon. Together. As they closed their eyes, hoping for a rescue or a demise, a bright pink light fills the cabin. They opened their eyes and looked in disbelief. They saw a silhouette inside a pink bubble. "Kitty?" he asked. "Is that you?" The silhouette said nothing. It holds out both hands to them. Deep within it, they seemed to hear the voice of Princess Kitty.
Take my hand, children. I have finally come to see you again, when fate takes you.
Fearfully, hesitantly, the children reached forward and grasped both of her hands. Instantly, they were swallowed up by the bubble. They could no longer see the control cabin. Only this creature remained, the one creature that they've longed to see again. That, and the pastoral void around them. They felt warmth flowing through their shoulders and down their spines.
Have you forgotten about me?
She simply asked. They began to feel strangely relaxed, detached from themselves. They both embraced her. "Oh, Kitty," Todd whispered. "We never did. We believe in you." Mr. and Mrs. Pratchett can only watch with horror as the control cabin gives way and plummets to the ground, reducing into a jagged heap of steel. Then, the horrible chain reaction occurs. With a thunderous, high-pitched wrenching of metal, the Providence shears in two. Both pieces fell onto the wrecked control cabin, reducing what was once a Zeppelin into rubble. The Providence has died that day, along with another chapter in a golden age. Mr. and Mrs. Pratchett embrace each other. She felt the realization most of all as she breaks down and wails with grief. But Grandpa Jack shook his head in disbelief. He had a feeling that Todd and Audrey had been rescued at the last minute. The Cat Queen's face was still grinning, even at the Pratchett's unhappiness. So maybe beneath it, she felt sympathetic towards them. Then again, maybe not. So why should she? She addressed to the crowd. Poor, poor children. Seeing them so young, they had their lives ahead of them. When life became less pleasant, not only can they rely on their imagination and their childish fantasies to get them through, they rely on their Princess Kitty. So why hasn't she come here to save the day? She brought so many wonders to you while trying to fit in. And this is how you thank her? By driving her away? Right now, you've all been admonished for driving her away. The same goes to your mayor. You're all responsible for this calamity, which could have been prevented. Should you open your eyes and listen the first time. But I think it's too late now. Which means what's really, really funny to me now is that the children will never have the chance to grow up. Never. I do hope you're all very, very proud of your actions today. Your mayor especially. Now silence all. For Todd and Audrey's goodbye. Turning the other way towards the wreckage, she calls out, "Goodbye, children. If only the girl was here to save you." Then she can hear Mayor Donovan saying, "It should have been me, instead of those children." She turned to him and cooed, "Aww, why would you ever wish that? It really has been a glorious bicentennial, hasn't it? Pretty sure your people will never forget it. Darling." The last word brought a shiver down his spine. He didn't reply back and turns away in shame. Still had that feeling, Grandpa Jack asked, "Miss Cat, is it my soul that calls upon my name?" she asked. "I had a feeling. Let me guess, darling. Angina, isn't it?" "No, I'm serious. It's the grandchildren." I know. You'll miss them too." "No, I didn't mean that honestly." "Maybe you really need to get your eyes fixed," he shouted. "She saved those grandchildren, did she? I seriously have no time for your dark humor. Not today. Now, did she or did she not save them?" "Oh, darling," she said. "Is this how you behave? You and your family happen to show up just to watch the children die. If she did, if the Princess Kitty did, then things will turn out well and live happily ever after. Too bad nobody around you believes in fairy tales anymore. The captain and the dirigible crew exit the cat bus as they realize what has happened. At the loss of the children, the captain took off his hat and bowed his head, saying,
God rest their souls.
The crew did the same. She looked up at the sky, grinning. If only the girl was there to save them. At the rooftop, Dorothy Chandler reports on the microphone, trying to fight back tears. Ladies and gentlemen, it's hard to believe what's happening. The horror of it all. I don't know what to say next, but indeed, it could be a tragic day for the people of this city. Until further notice, Market Square will be blocked within a mile radius. Now, a moment of silence for the loss of those 2 young children. But her moment of grief was shattered when the entire sky begins to turn pink. What? She gasped. What's happening? I don't know, Cameron said. But we have to report this right away. She then reports while trembling at the pink sky. I know this sounds crazy, but just after the dirigible collapsed, the sky just turned pink as cotton candy. We don't know what's happening, but we'll give you an update as soon as possible. Wait! I think I hear something. So do I, Miss Chandler, Cameron said. I think it sounds a lot like singing. The crowd that came to Market Square and throughout the entire city became stunned, especially the cat bus, the dirigible crew, and the Pratchett's. Above them, in the pink saturated sky, there came a voice, faint at first, and then clear ran the words.
I am here. I've come to this world. May my joy be unfurled from this woe. In the end, 'tis hope that prevails, found in old fairy tales long ago. I bring forth a dream to have this nightmare ended. Wipe away your tears and let your wounds be mended. All you need is me, who can right the wrong here. 'Tis my destiny, where I should belong here. Once upon a time is how a life begins. Happily ever after is how it ends. I am the one that bestows any marvel. In the name of the kingdom, you will be my friends. The rain, my tears are like rain, cleansing you from the pain all around. There was hope with the first ray of light. I shall do what is right for your town. As long as happiness isn't torn asunder, I shall roam your streets and bestow every wonder. How I love this world, where I can right the wrong here. One more chance to see that I now belong here. My love never ends, it shall go on forever. Across the land and beyond the sea, I am the one you shall always depend on. Once and for all, believe in
from the midst of the saturated sky, there came a brilliant flash of light, which urges the crowd to remain looking up, especially the Pratchett's. Grandpa Jack felt weak. He brushed his hand across his eyes and stared harder at the flash of light as it descended towards the crowd. The clouds began to fade, leaving the sun and the blue sky. They shielded their eyes as the flash landed in front of them. It went on for about a moment before it dimmed. Out from the flash came the cat-girl princess of KAWAII Wonderland and the two Pratchett children. Mr. Pratchett uncovers his eyes and spotted the children and their friend standing. Princess Kitty bowed as the children ran and hugged their crying mother. Mr. Pratchett became awestruck as he trembled at the sight of the princess.
You finally saw me, didn't you?
She asked. Yes, he said. He couldn't tear his eyes off the face of her, so beautiful with her pink eyes and matching hair, and the white cat ears. He kneels down.
Then say it,
she said.
Say it, and truly mean it.
At last, he admitted. I truly believe in you, Princess Kitty, for saving my children and for everything you've done. How could I ever thank you? He then ran towards her and cried on her shoulder. He's now relieved that he truly believed in her, instead of just saying that in order to make his children feel better. More importantly to him, he felt like a kid again. Grinning to herself, the Cat Queen said, Looks like we're not needed anymore. I think the whole city has learned their lesson. Isn't that right, Cat Bus? The Cat Bus purrs as he bends down. One of the windows stretched downward, becoming a door. She, the cats, and the engineer board it. She calls out to Princess Kitty. Let your name be written in every book and poem. Written in every song and dance. Performed on stage and on screen. Let your name be heard and spoken. Embedded into the memory of men and women and children of this world. Indefinitely. That depends if you're welcomed at last. It is the unknown's intention to see that they do after what happened. It will be listening. With a roar, the cat bus stormed out of Market Square. The people moved out of his way without getting ran over. I must say that experience almost cost us our necks, boss, the engineer snapped, still in pain. I hope we never set foot in this city again. I've once told you this before, purred the Cat Queen. Of course, I'm really not going to say it again, my short-tempered friend. With the Princess Kitty becoming known, normal life is now destined to end. The engineer groaned and facepalmed, screaming, Burger! The cat bus sprints east, cross town, pounding the pavement. Cars screeching to a halt, people gaping as the Grimalkin flashes past, accelerating out of the buildings and through the trees. The people could have sworn that they hear a loud howl in the sound of a mad cackle. Wondering what's going on, Dorothy Chandler looked down through the binoculars. She was shocked to see the cat-girl princess and the two Pratchett children. Unbelievable! She exclaimed. Something from another world saved those children! That's Princess Kitty, Cameron said. It seems that this might have a happy ending after all. You must report this at once! Let the whole media know! Then he rushed inside, while saying to himself, Hope I'm not too late. Meanwhile, Mrs. Pratchett asked Princess Kitty, What will you do now?
That depends if I could have another adventure with the children that must be believed to be seen.
Princess Kitty smiled.
For now, hope has prevailed, which means we must be going. Come along, children.
The children went to her, and she raised her scepter. Wait! Mrs. Pratchett cried. You should stay here. Perhaps there might be reporters coming here later, not to mention photographers. Just think of the questions they're willing to ask you, so they get to know you better. They have never seen something like the likes of you before. But Princess Kitty used her scepter to encase all three in a bubble.
Maybe next time. They can wait, can't they?
She laughed.
And Jack! Take their parents home and tell the others about me. I got a surprise waiting for them.
Can do, Kitty! Grandpa Jack smiled and waved. See you later! The citizens saw her drifting away. Stop! They cried. Wait, come back! But she ignored them all, as her bubble drifts upward into the sky. Grandpa Jack began to push the onlookers back as he, Mr. and Mrs. Pratchett, make their way towards their car. Come on, boys, you heard her! Next time, it's all over! Son, you take the wheel! Mayor Darwin carefully approached the grandfather and demanded, When will she come back? Grandpa Jack looked at him. You're hurt, Mayor. Can't you see that? I was wrong about this cat-girl princess, Mr. Pratchett. I didn't know she was really that important to this city. I'm even glad she came here to save the day. Be glad that the cat lady with the big chest isn't here to gloat. What do you want from Kitty? I want her to forgive me, Mayor Darwin said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. For everything she has done, she deserves everything that she gets. I will welcome her. However, I need time to plan it. I will also drop the charges against Takahata and rehire him. Now where will she be? If you want her to forgive you, you keep your eyes open and wait like everybody else, Grandpa Jack said. I'm certain she'll reward you for welcoming her to your city. He sat in the back seat. Mr. and Mrs. Pratchett sat on the front seats. Cameron Copley poked his head through the open window. Jack! He said. Why'd she do that? Running off with your children while the people gather around her like a pack of worshippers to God. Why, they may be desperate to know her better now. She had completely won the city over. But now she tells them to wait until next time? I really hate to sound like a jerk, but I think she may be out of her mind. These people always believe in what is real and nothing else, Grandpa Jack said. She knew it herself. Well, shoot, Jack. They would accept her now. They would after she saved those children. Your children. And come to think of it, nobody knew what she can do next. Exactly. As Cameron sticks his head out of the window, Grandpa Jack said, Until then, you watch the skies for her. You'll see her again sure enough. Go home. As the car drives off, Cameron stared up in wonder and smiles as the pink bubble soars upward into the sky. Elsewhere, later on, the news began to spread like clockwork. Many reporters ran to the phone booths and called the presses. Stop the presses! Do I have a new front page for you? Cat Go Princess and Giant Cat Bus saves children and crew from doomed dirigible. Make sure you put in big bold print. Mysterious cat girl from another world saves city from disaster, friend or foe. While the car speeds down Main Street, there was trouble. Police cruisers and a paddy wagon strewn around the front of the gun shop. And then there was Constance Malchance, with her breast against the hood of a cruiser. Her hands were behind her back, with handcuffs.
"Officer!" she cried. "You have to believe me! The giant cat attacked me and threw me into the shop window! That's how I got hurt!"
"Oh yeah?" an officer asked. "And next you're gonna tell me there's a castle in the sky floating around. Like we've heard that bunk before." Mr. Pratchett stopped the car and heads out. "Sean, where you going?" Grandpa Jack asked. When Constance saw Mr. Pratchett, she screamed,
"Pratchett! Tell these officers to let me go!"
"What's going on?" he asked the officer, but shows no emotion to her. "I got a call from a hysterical proprietor that she tries to attack him at the store," Wild said. "When we get there, after we found out that all's well, he's out cold, and this woman is still conscious. We arrest her on the spot, and she tried to resist, only to make things worse for herself." "Attack someone in a gun shop?" Grandpa Jack asked.
"That's not true!"
Constance shouted.
"This human-sized cat is from a giant cat monster! The one that ate my dog! The human-sized cat intimidates me by turning herself into a giant and tossed me into the window. Then she attacked the proprietor from behind and imitated his voice on the phone. Pratchett, you believe me, didn't you? Please!"
"You think she's telling the truth?" Goodwin asked. Mr. Pratchett shrugged. "Wish I could, officer, but I can't. I just had to act my age. Act like a grown-up. All she talks is nonsense." He glanced at Constance. "You did tell me that before, didn't you?" Widening her eyes, Constance felt new waves of anger take over her, while she struggles to get free.
"I know what you're trying to do! You think I'm crazy! You're doing that on purpose! That's never going to work!"
Just then, Norm and Flanagan arrive.
"I hope we're not too late!"
Flanagan cried.
"I'm allergic to bloodshed!"
"No, we're not, and thank God," Norm said, and approached her. He orders the officers, "Get her up!" The officers hoisted her onto her feet. When Norm looked at Constance again, she could see no sign of losing his temper. He had promised Mr. Pratchett at the day of the parade. "Mrs. Malchance," he said, "I warned you what would happen if you don't clean up your act, didn't I?" Before she could say anything, he slams his fist at her solar plexus. Constance cried out in pain, and she was caught by the officers. She was struggling to breathe. "That's what you get for giving my grandchildren a hard time!" Grandpa Jack laughed. "Silence!" Norm said. From his uniform, Wild pulls out a folded note with a pink paw print on it. Mrs. Pratchett got out of the car and asked, "What is it?" "I just found this note inside." Wild opened the note. "I think it's written by a witness who makes it out alive." "What does it say?" Mr. Pratchett asked. Wild reads the letter. "I saw the whole thing when the crazy woman barges into the shop. I decide to write this note in case I don't make it. I saw her attack the proprietor who went to call the police. She trashed the shop and destroyed the phone. When she does that, I just found the opportunity to knock her out. So I just went and do it, with a cat-like disposition. You see, all summer, I had a feeling that she had behaved irresponsibly. So, it is my recommendation that you should send her to Silverwood Hospital at once if you arrive. I'm sure she'll improve for the whole summer. Probably a whole year." "And who is it from?" Grandpa Jack asked. "I find it interesting." "Someone named Miss Lenoir," Wild said. "Whoever this Lenoir girl is, she done a great job at stopping her," Norm said. "Which is why Silverwood is where she'll stay for a year unless her behavior improves. Take her in!"
"Pratchett!"
Constance screamed as the officers dragged her into the paddy wagon.
"Oh, when I get out of here, you'll be sorry for saying that to me! Use my own words against me, are you? You and your children will be very sorry! I know you will! I know you will!
The officer slammed the door at her face, and the paddy wagon speeds off. If only the children can see this, Grandpa Jack said to himself. They'd be really gay. I saw you in a rush, Walt said. Where are you going? Norm asked. Thank you for reminding me, Mr. Pratchett said, as he and the other Pratchetts got back in the car. Kitty told us to meet her back home. Kitty? Goodwin asked.
That's the cat girl!
Flanagan exclaimed. He asked Mr. Pratchett.
When shall we see her again?
I don't know, Mr. Pratchett said, but I'll be glad to let you know later. Then the car speeds off towards the neighborhood. The pink bubble was now hovering high over the city of Kodono, higher than the dirigible. Inside stood Princess Kitty and the children.
How I love the two of you,
she said, smiling at the two.
So do we,
Todd said.
We love you too. I think you're the most wonderful friend we ever had.
I'm very pleased to hear you say that. And now I shall tell you why. You see, Pratchetts, I've decided to come stay in your place until I have a home of my own.
They stared at her. Todd opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. Princess Kitty went on regardless.
I would do anything to make up for the expedition I've been having for 3 weeks. So what else must I do? Find more grown-ups for snow or high water? I could even survive without you two for a few more weeks, even your grandfather, in case something terrible happens to you too.
You mean it?
Todd asked.
Well, there is a catch. A child like you has to have someone from another world like me, another being.
Princess K said.
And when children progress through their teenage years, then they'll have to stop believing in me, meaning that I won't be needed anymore. You see, when you turn 15, I'll be gone from your life indefinitely.
We understand, Todd said sadly. We've had no choice.
Growing up like death is inevitable.
I'll be 13 in the autumn when school starts. I'll be a teenager. I'll be 9 soon, Audrey said. But we wouldn't want you to leave. Audrey's right, Todd said. What if we still believe after we're grown-ups? Will you stay with us?
Will it ever last? I'm bound to love all children like you. It is my royal duty as princess to strip them of their unhappiness. It is my royal duty as princess to make a smile scratch out a tear cried on a sadder day. Maybe Earth shall accept me like a dono, but it will take a while.
Princess K said. Will you stay?
It may not be a possibility for myself, but I'll try my best to stay.
The children then hugged their friend. But wait, what about the others? Todd asked. What about their grandparents? Eliza, Eileen, and David?
What will they think of you?
Audrey said. Princess Kitty laughed.
Oh, children! It may take a while of getting used to having a Kako princess as a part of your family. A glorious warmth this afternoon rain. A portion of misfortune has been departed. Let us go, for another adventure to obtain. I can't even wait to get started. And as long as I continue to preen, wonders await that must be believed to be seen.
Meanwhile, at the Pratchett house, there was pandemonium. Arguments lashed out between Mr. and Mrs. Pratchett with Grandpa Jack and the other grandparents. It may last forever. Nothing left to say about it except, what a predicament.
Do you have any idea how upset we really are today?
Grandma Eileen screamed.
I knew dirigibles like that could never be trusted. Not ever.
I know, Mrs. Pratchett said. But Princess Kitty saved our children.
I don't want to hear more bunk about this princess fellow,
Grandma Liza snapped.
I say it's all Jack's fault. He's the one who filled their heads with nonsense.
Mother, Mrs. Pritchett said, you have to listen to us. Listen to us.
You heard it on the radio, didn't you? Your children died in that Zeppelin.
Grandpa David shouted.
They said it. That's when we decided to not listen any longer. We don't want to listen.
Grandma Liza yelled.
Not now, not ever. The children are as dead as plague victims.
It's not true. They're alive. Kitty rescued them, Mr. Pritchett screamed.
You lie just one more time and I'll bust your kisser off.
Grandma Liza snapped.
Everyone just shut up!
Grandpa Jack shouted, the loudest of all. Everyone obliges. We were there when the Zeppelin collapsed. We know what happened next, yet none of you would believe me. Princess Kitty saved your grandchildren from sudden death, and now you all think this is the right time to argue about it?
She saved them, all right.
Grandma Arlene cried.
Saved them because you dreamed her up. That didn't stop us from grief. We've been upset as we were today. I'm with Lizzie. Now please stop talking about this princess that you and the children have dreamed up.
Well, she may be shard that way as a dream. But doesn't everything that happened today? Grandpa Jack asked. The dirigible crashing into the tower, the cat bus shaving the crew, and that man on the rope? And Kitty, shaving Todd and Audrey before it collapsed to the ground. Somebody had to dream about it first. And maybe that's what I did. I dreamed about it the most. Now that would have hit you where you lived, wouldn't it? I promise you that everything is about to change. He has a point, Mr. Pritchett said. I don't believe in anything as a grown-up, and ended up paying the price.
Please don't listen to your father,
Grandma Eileen said.
All he talks now is nonsense. We know what he's like.
Heed my son's heart and repent, Grandpa Jack said.
We will do nothing of the sort,
Grandma Eliza said. Then I will make your objections fall on deaf ears, Grandpa Jack said. Because aside from the children and their mother and father, I believe in Princess Kitty. And I think you three should do the same. Without her, you'll be joyless before you can reach 100. And now you better believe that she's coming here with the children, and without danger from ever happening to them. However, the grandparents have had enough.
How dare you speak to your in-laws this way?
Grandpa David barked. That's when the bells on the tree began to ring from outside, and the living room door swung open. In came Princess Kitty and the children. The three grandparents gasped in shock and surprise, while Mr. and Mrs. Pritchett stood still.
It's the Tooth Fairy!
Grandpa David screamed.
Tooth Fairy?
Princess Kitty asked.
Why would I be the Tooth Fairy? You three barely have any teeth.
Todd and Audrey rushed into their mother's arms.
Clearly, you three haven't met the likes of me before,
Princess Kitty said.
That's because I was once a little girl named Kitty of Koriko. My real name is Princess Kitty of KAWAII Wonderland, a cat-girl princess who makes herself known to your city and save your grandchildren. Now, if you have any questions, please speak now.
If you're really a cat-girl princess, then what are you going to eat?
Grandma Eileen asked.
If eating sweets answers your question, it comes as no surprise,
Princess Kitty said.
Back where I come from, we crave sweets without ever feeling sick, or gaining weight, or getting diabetes or diarrhea, unlike the people in the city. And as I wandered around for 3 weeks, I was introduced to a haven of confectionaries underneath a blue roof, which you call Good Cooking Pan Bakery. And that's the first thing I like about this city, the right to dine sweets without any payment. Therefore, in the name of the kingdom, Good Cooking Pan Bakery shall be my official royal eatery for years to come. Diarrhea? Don't you think it's inappropriate for a girl talking about it? Please refrain from inappropriate things, Eileen. There are children present.
What about school, Kitty?
Grandma Eliza interrogated.
Aren't you supposed to have an education like the rest of us when you come here?
I have all the knowledge of my kingdom, Elizabeth.
Princess Kitty smiled.
I embrace in my heart forever the trait of my special heritage. Back where I come from, I learned how to speak and write notes in rouge, and learned to leap from one to the other, and many abilities, which can be influenced with my scepter. Even though I wasn't schooled like the rest of the citizens, I've listened to the wisdom of my father as I progress with age. I've learned the difference between right and wrong, and as I wander around for 3 weeks, I somehow inspire a person I haven't met 3 weeks earlier to sketch 2 portraits of me. Someday, since he's filming newsreels, he'll eventually go into artistry because of me. And that's the second thing I like about this city, the right to inspire people. Therefore, in the name of the kingdom, Cameron Christian Copley shall be my official illustrator for the stories I'd like to tell anyone for years to come.
How are you going to live?
Grandpa David asked.
There's no way you're going to live with us.
I've been planning to have a house of my own, but I think I've decided to live under your roof so I can be in touch with your grandchildren, David,
Princess Kitty said.
After all that's happened to them, I'd vowed to give my life for them. Without being Tom and Audrey, they wouldn't ever encourage the citizens to believe in me, especially others like me. Back where I come from, my father told me that when I'm old enough, I'll be leaving my home and into a new world, the only world the universe can muster. And as I wander around for 3 weeks, I've seen the people who already grew up and have their head out of the clouds and keep both feet on the ground. Except some of them, especially the children, Grandpa Jack, and his son. And as ideal as I may think, I thought there is a possibility that grown-ups might eventually stop acting their age after being bored with what they live and start feeling like a child at heart for the sake of their great happiness, which they've desperately lusted over time. Oh, yes, I'm sure if we were at home because of your grandchildren. And that's the third thing I like about this city, for having someone to feel like a kid again and to truly believe. Therefore, in the name of the kingdom, I shall remain in your household, spending more and more time with your grandchildren until further notice.
Well, you can forget it. There's no way you're going to live here, filling our grandchildren's heads.
But she was impervious.
A quick temper will make a fool of you soon enough,
she said.
It is my intention to see that you welcome me like everybody else. I won't have you easing your conscience, invoking me things that make no difference now.
That's right, Mrs. Pratchett said. Things are about to change because of her.
Then you must be out of your mind,
Grandma Eileen said.
That's really a cat-gone shame,
Princess Kitty said.
They can see reason and feel like children again. But the 3 of you don't, sadly. Well, we've got a long way to go, haven't we? Have you had any idea who you're dealing with? You're dealing with a cat-girl princess who has single-handedly overthrown a totalitarian country and all its armed forces, humiliate a horrid, fun-hating neighbor, stop a duo of bank robbers, become part of a fishing expedition, and end up helping the men get back home safely after certain disorder fall on them, protect a couple of balloonists from a terrible bird, stage a mystical parade, and save the children from certain death and disorder, while the Zeppelin crew and my friend Gift Rogers were rescued by the capricious cat bus, the Bakineko Transport Deluxe, with more adventures for you to lust.
I know, Grandpa Jack said, smiling. Now, in the name of your kingdom, we be honored that you become a part of this family. And how does you feel now that Cadona is your new home?
I must be honest. I've started to gain some confidence, and everything is falling into place. There are still some times when I feel a little homesick, but all in all, I sure love this city,
Princess Kitty declared.
I hope there's not any funny business about you, is there?
Grandma Eileen asked, suspiciously.
I will not promise you that at all,
Princess Kitty said. Just as she was about to leave, Grandpa David called out.
Don't you expect us to let you hang out with us? This family's all doing fine and well until you come here. We're all warning you, girl. No funny business.
That's when she hears Ryotaro's words. Simply, they welcome you. Normal life is over. They don't. We be generous enough to let them figure it out themselves. Clearly, she thought that the kitsune is serious. What will happen if people don't welcome her? Even she too was scared to think about it. When it comes to curiosity, she knew too well what happens to a cat. Her smile faded and spoke softly as she makes her way out and towards the grandchildren.
Your family will learn to get along with me. It may take a while, but one way or another, consider myself a part of this family. You just wait and see.